What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 3TF Chapter 51 Killing the Evil Dragon, the Destruction of the Dragon Pirates. Don't even think about stopping me. The evil dragon saw this scene and was very aware of the gap between the two parties. He threw the small bottle into his mouth without hesitation and swallowed it hard. At this moment, Ron's figure had arrived in front of the evil dragon. Seeing the evil dragon swallowing it into its belly, he raised his hand and attacked without caring about anything else. Double Chidori, sizzling, birds chirped loudly, and Ron's hands penetrated the dragon's body without hesitation at this moment. Peeved, blood splattered, the dragon's body shook, and the severe pain made him cry out, "Ah! Ah!" and his voice also attracted the attention of the surrounding fishmen. Evil dragon. Arlong. After seeing Ron penetrate the dragon's body, all the murlocs present were anxious and even looked a little crazy. Regardless of anything else, most of the fishmen turned around and came to support. Don't even think about running away, however, will Luffy and others let them get what they want? Seeing that Ron was about to kill the dragon, they hadn't finished the fight yet, which was not good news. For a time, Luffy, Zoro and Sanji all intensified their attacks. Rubber machine gun. Ito Ryu Shishigege. Boning knife. In an instant, many fishmen were knocked to the ground. None of the cadres, including Zauba, fell to the ground. Although their strength is good, Zoro is still much weaker when facing the enhanced version of Luffy. Haha, at this time, the dragon's laughter resounded. Although his body was pierced, he was already beginning to be enhanced by the power of the poison. This also caused his strength to soar rapidly in a short period of time, and even the fatal injuries on his body could not pose a threat to him. Kid, die. Without any hesitation, the dragon raised his fist and hit Ron in front of him. But at this moment, Ron didn't have any fear. He didn't even try to dodge the fist that was attacking him. He raised the corner of his mouth and said, "Evil dragon, your attack has no meaning to me. Blow it up." As he spoke, the lightning around Ron suddenly intensified. At this moment, the two currents within the double Chidori were completely aroused. Bang bang bang. Continuous explosions came from the dragon's body. It can be seen that his body split apart at a speed visible to the naked eye, blood spattered, and flesh and blood flew everywhere. In just a moment, the flesh and blood on his body had completely exploded and turned into blood mist, leaving only a white skeleton standing motionless. At this moment, the dragon's attacking fist approached Ron's body. However, when he got closer, he was already unable to move forward, and the area in front of Ron's eyes was stagnant and could no longer be approached. At this point, Ron couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Although it was a risk, there was no doubt that I won the bet. Although the power of the vicious medicine will be activated quickly, there is also a certain interval. Killing the evil dragon within this time period will directly nip the crisis in the cradle. Evil dragon. Arlong. No, damn humans, how is this possible? Quote. At the same time, the fishmen around were also dumbfounded. I can't believe it at all, and I can't even accept such a thing. After all, it was an evil dragon, the strongest among them, and it even took the magical poison. But now, he was still killed, and he didn't even have the ability to resist this. Well done. Well done Ron. On the contrary, Luffy and others were overjoyed at this moment. Seeing Ron successfully kill the dragon, they increased their speed again. Under such circumstances, a famous fishman was knocked to the ground, and the overall situation also showed a one-sided trend. As time passed, a famous fishman pirate died. Facing the Luffy trio with full firepower, they had no resistance at all. At this moment, Ron did not continue to participate in the battle, but walked straight to where Nami and others were. Sorry, Nami. After arriving in front of Nami, Ron said with some embarrassment, "The poison that guy swallowed can greatly enhance his strength and combat effectiveness. I can't keep it or it will be in danger." "It does not matter." In response, Nami shook his head and then said moodily, "It's good news if you can kill the evil dragon. But Ron, please protect me next time." With that said, Nami stepped forward. He immediately picked up a knife on the ground and walked towards the pirates who were defeated by Luffy and Sanji. As for Zoro, as a swordsman, and with Ron's previous stimulation, he didn't hold back when he struck now. He almost always hacked to death without any possibility of survival. Seeing this situation, Ron was thoughtful. He immediately followed Usopp and others. Soon, several people arrived at the battlefield. You can see that Nami raised his knife and without hesitation harvested the lives of the murlocs on the ground who had lost their fighting ability. "Nami, you have to die. Nami, you dare. Damn humans, we are noble fishmen, how dare you? Stop it, we are Shichibukai's people. Stop, if you attack us, Brother Jinbei will not let you go." For a time, the shouts of those fishmen resounded continuously. There were begging for mercy, insults, and threats, but they had no effect on Nami. She still held the knife and continued to harvest the lives of the fishmen, which made Usopp, Johnny, Joseph, and Sanji all look pale. But Ron, Zoro and Luffy didn't care. After all, This kind of scene pales in comparison to the massacre of Ron in Shields Town. Do not kill me. I know Mr. Rayleigh. He is the former vice captain of the Pirate King. You cannot kill me. At this time, a voice begging for mercy sounded. Looking through the sound, it can be seen that Zalba has been knocked down by Zoro. At this moment, his octopus arm has been completely cut off. He is lying on the ground and looks at Zoro, who is coming forward in horror. Rayleigh? One Piece vice captain? However, his threats meant nothing. Zoro just glanced at him and killed him with a wave of words without hesitation. At this moment, a burst of rapid footsteps sounded. Immediately afterwards, a large number of Marines can be seen approaching quickly. The number of these Marines reached at least 300, and the leader was none other than Colonel Mouse. He not only asked the Dragon Pirates to deal with Ron and others, but more importantly, he mobilized manpower from the Marine branch base to come for support. Almost instantly, a large number of Marines surrounded the area. Each one raised their muskets and pointed them at Ron and others and shouted, "Hands up! Put your hands up, you are surrounded." Chapter 52 The Rats' Encirclement and Suppression, the Straw Hat Pirates Attack. Marine. So many people. Seeing this, Usopp, Johnny and Joseph were all shocked. After all, under such circumstances, being surrounded by hundreds of Marines at once is not good news. What to do? How should we deal with so many Marines? It's over, there are so many Marines showing up. For a moment, everyone felt a little desperate. Including Sanji, Luffy and Zoro were all startled. They didn't care about anything else at the moment and looked at the surrounding area warily. Only Ron and Nami looked the same as before. All this was within the scope of Ron's plan. Although Nami didn't know it, she had vaguely guessed it. Moreover, Ron and others killed more than just this Marine when they were in Shields Town, so she had nothing to be afraid of. Thinking of this, Nami continued to wave the blade in his hand to harvest the remaining murlocs. Ha ha ha, at this time, Colonel Mouse burst into laughter. It can be seen that he walked to the area inside the venue, glanced at the fishman's body on the ground, and then focused his eyes on Ron and others, and said with a cold expression, "Damn kid, we meet again. Today is your day to die. Not only you, but also the people in the Straw Hat Pirates behind you will die too. In this way, I defeated the Dragon Pirates and the Straw Hat Pirates in one fell swoop. This huge achievement is enough for me to be promoted to the Grand Line." Ha ha ha, at the end of the sentence, Colonel Mouse couldn't help laughing again. But his words made Usopp and others even more nervous and scared. After all, according to what the mouse said, they were all going to be killed here. Luffy, what do we do? Brother Zoro, let's fight out together, shall we? Boss Ron, shall we break out together? For a moment, Usopp and others all spoke. Facing so many Marines, they were afraid in their hearts and wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Both Luffy and Zoro also looked at Ron, not that they were afraid, but because it's not necessary. After all, it was a Marine, and if he were to be killed again, it would be very troublesome. It doesn't have to be this way. Waving his hand, Ron looked at the mouse area calmly and said, "I planned to kill it before, but after all, this mouse is Colonel Marine, and he has many loyal subordinates. The reason why the Dragon Pirates were able to take root in East Blue and even control so many islands and villages was all because of his help behind the scenes. Without the protection of rats, the Dragon Pirates may be strong, but they will also be hunted by Marine. How could they build a dragon paradise or even enslave so many islands and people? So, I let him go before. In addition to letting him send out all the Dragon Pirates to cause trouble for us, the most important thing is to give him enough time to gather his own troops. These guys appearing in front of me are all the same, and only their death can truly bring peace, security and freedom to the people in this sea area." I see. This is actually the case. After listening to Ron's story, Luffy, Zoro and others suddenly realized. At this moment, they finally understood the meaning of Ron's words. Neither Mouse nor the Marines under his command are good things. Only by catching them all can we truly save the people in this sea area. On the other hand, if they are not defeated, then even if there is no Dragon Pirates, there will still be evil Tiger Pirates and Wolf Pirates in the future, and they will continue to become Mouse's pawns and enslave the people's method. Those who have done the most evil deserve to die. Slowly raising the word, Watto, in his hand, Zoro said with a solemn expression. Hearing this, Luffy on the side also reacted, slowly stretched out his hand and lowered his straw hat and said, "Come together. Get rid of these guys as soon as possible." Yes. Good. As the captain spoke, Ron and others did not hesitate and quickly attacked the surroundings. Especially Ron. His target at the moment was directly at the mouse. Damn it. How dare you guys resist? Seeing this, the mouse was frightened and angry. Does he know how powerful Ron is, especially since the wound on his neck is still aching? For a moment, the mouse didn't care about anything else, and quickly waved and shouted, "Shoot! Shot! Destroy all these damn pirates!" As soon as these words came out, all the Marines present also reacted. Watching the attack, Ron and others quickly pulled the trigger. In an instant, gunfire broke out. Countless bullets and artillery shells attacked Luffy and others. "Everyone come to me." Seeing this, Luffy's expression changed and he quickly shouted. If so many guns and bullets fall into the crowd, they will definitely cause huge losses. Although Luffy is not afraid, but except for him and Ron, the rest of Zoro and others are still at the level of ordinary people. In such a situation, once it is affected, it is likely to cause injury or even death. Thinking of this, Luffy didn't care about anything else. After Zoro and others arrived at his side, he took a deep breath without hesitation. The next second, Luffy's body began to grow. The rubber body directly turned into a balloon-like existence. Immediately afterwards, countless bullets and cannonballs fell on it without causing any damage. Go back! With a low cry, Luffy stood up straight. The next second, the densely packed bullets and shells were bounced away and landed in the marine crowd not far away. Rumble, rumble, for a time, the roaring sound continued. The shell exploded and the bullet pierced the body. A marine fell to the ground, and the sound of wailing could not be heard. Ah! Ah, it's now. At this time, Zoro, Sanji and others seized the opportunity. Without any hesitation, he rushed forward and began to harvest the lives of those marines, ensuring that they would not be given the possibility of another large-scale gun attack. At the same time, Ron's figure also appeared next to Colonel Mouse. The next second, Ron's hand reached out. The sound of birdsong resounded, and the Chidori launched at this moment, directly piercing the chest of Colonel Mouse. Mid-Autumn Festival and National Day Family Feedback. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Grab a deposit now. Activity time, September 29th to October 6th. Chapter 53 The Death of Colonel Rat, The Destruction of Marine Scum. Ah, painful screams came from his mouth, and Colonel Mouse's eyes widened at this moment, staring at Ron in front of him with fear and regret in his eyes. He never thought that even though he summoned all his subordinates to come, he still failed. Ron was actually so powerful that he ignored the presence of Marines around him and launched a surprise attack on him. Feeling that life was passing by, Colonel Mouse shouted in fear, "Don't kill me. I'm from World Government, I'm Colonel Marine. My father is the CP7 commander of the World Government, and my brother is the Flying Squirrel Vice Admiral. If you kill me, my brother will not let you go." CP7 Commander. Weasel Vice Admiral. Hearing this, Ron's eyes showed a hint of understanding. No wonder. No wonder this rat has been domineering in East Blue for so many years and even done so many shameful things, but it was not noticed by Marine, and he was not even deprived of his position. The background of this guy who co-wrote is really strong. His brother Weasel Vice Admiral alone is an elite Vice Admiral within Marine, and is an existence that ordinary Vice Admirals cannot compare to. Moreover, Weasel was one of the Vice Admirals of Buster Call in the past, which also resulted in their power being not inferior to that of the Admiral candidates. It can be said that Weasel's existence is definitely at the pinnacle of power within Marine. In addition, his father is actually the commander of CP7, so one can imagine how huge his position is within the world government. CP organizations from CP0 to CP9 cannot be underestimated and are one of the key pillars of world government. As the commander of a team of the CP organization, his power is not inferior to that of Marine Admiral. With such a background, it is reasonable for rats to be able to run rampant in East Blue. Moreover, in the original work, he remembered that although Colonel Mouse was defeated and even taken away and imprisoned, he did not die in the true sense. It is possible that he was brought to the world government and gave up his identity as Marine. There is no danger in being in the world government. So what? After understanding the reason, Ron didn't feel much fear at the moment. After casting a glance at the mouse, he said calmly, "The things you did are enough to make you die thousands of times. I'm not a Marine, and I'm not an idiot who will let you continue to live." With that said, Ron suddenly increased the intensity of his lightning fruit. Sizzling. In an instant, the arc jumped. Colonel Mouse's body was directly burned into charcoal by the power of lightning, and he didn't even have time to continue his story. Colonel Rat is dead. Damn, that guy killed Colonel Rat. Come on, run away, we are no match for these guys. This scene immediately changed the faces of Marines around him. After seeing the death of the mice one by one, they turned around and ran away, regardless of where they were staying. They didn't even care about the life or death of their companions on the ground. Want to leave? No one can leave today. Seeing this situation, how could Ron allow these guys to leave alive? After all, he already knew the mouse's background. Under such circumstances, if these guys are allowed to leave alive, the danger will be even greater. Thinking of this, Ron didn't hesitate and turned on the super speed force mode directly. Chidori blade. The next second, Ron picked up a knife and activated the Chidori blade. The sound of birdsong gradually became low, and then directly covered the blade. Immediately afterwards, Ron chased out with a knife, and his whole body turned into a bolt of lightning and quickly harvested the lives of those Marines. Peefed, peefed. In an instant, a Marine fell to the ground dead, even his head had been severed. After the Chidori was attached to the blade, the power and penetration of Ron's attack were greatly enhanced. In a short period of time, Ron had killed all the escaping Marines. So strong, so fast, very scary. At the same time, everyone present was stunned by Ron's series of operations. Especially Sanji, Johnny and Joseph. This was really the first time they saw Ron take a strong shot. That casual gesture killed hundreds of fleeing Marines. This method was simply unbelievable. The most important thing is Ron's speed under the blessing of the super speed force. There was no figure or trace at all. Even if he could barely trace it with the help of lightning arcs, Ron had no idea how far he had moved. This was not comparable to the brief encounter between Ron and Hawkeye, which was so intense that they both felt a sense of dryness and yearning. Ron's strength has become stronger again. Zoro tightened the knife in his hand, his expression a little serious. After all, when everyone first met, although Ron's strength was good, he was essentially not as good as Zoro and Luffy. But now, Ron's strength has actually improved to such an extent. Moreover, Luffy has reached the school level, and even the second gear is not something he can block. At this moment, Zoro is even more eager and intense to become stronger. After all, there is no harm without comparison. After comparing each other, he found that he was actually the least improved and the least improved among the three, which was a bit uncomfortable. Exercise, become stronger. I was just too lax and had to work harder. Almost instantly, Zoro made up his mind and stepped forward without hesitation to harvest the lives of those Marines who had lost their resistance. He didn't want to waste time at the moment. After handling these things as soon as possible, he would continue to train and become stronger. It's really strong. Even if I turn on second gear, I'm not as fast as Ron. Luffy was also a little shocked. Although he has completely mastered second gear during this period, his own strength has also been greatly improved. But there is no doubt that when Ron activates the super speed force, his speed is too fast. Even though his physical strength is not as good as his own, once Ron activates the super speed force and is blessed by the Chidori blade, Luffy doesn't think that his rubbery physique can ignore the sword's slashes. Thinking of this, Luffy hesitated for a moment, then bent down and picked up a knife and started to harvest the lives of those marine scum like Zoro. Become stronger. I have to work harder. With the actions of Luffy and Zoro, Sanji, Usopp and others on the side also woke up from their dreams. After looking at each other, Usopp, Sanji, and Nami all stepped forward and started to take action. Only Johnny and Joseph did not step forward because they knew what Luffy and others' actions meant this time. In addition to expressing their determination to become stronger, the more important thing is that they and Ron are companions and on the same team. If under such circumstances, it was just Ron who killed those Marines by himself, then to be honest it would be unjustifiable. As a companion, you must be brave enough to bear all this. Chapter 54 Destroy the Paradise and Part Ways. The screams stopped abruptly. The last Marine was killed by Usopp with a knife. At this point, the entire area was dead silent. Only Ron and others stood here without making any sound. Ron, after a long time, Nami's voice resounded. They are already dead, but I want to bury the people in the village. Although they deserve their own consequences, this is the last thing I can do. Good. Hearing this, Ron knew what Nami meant. Although those guys in Kokoja village deserve to die, after all, Nami has also lived for a while. Now that these people are all dead, she buries them as a final farewell. Thinking of this, Ron immediately said, in that case, let's go together. But you do this first. I have to go to the Dragon Paradise to see if there are any fish that have slipped through the net. Good. Hearing this, Luffy and others also nodded. This matter is over, but the guys in the Dragon Pirates are much stronger than ordinary people. If there are still fish that slip through the net, it will easily cause casualties if they leave. Immediately afterwards, Ron and others took action separately. Nami, Luffy and the others went to Kokoja village to bury Nokagao and others, while Ron went straight to the Dragon Paradise. Soon, Ron arrived at the Dragon Paradise. Not surprisingly, there are indeed several fishmen from the Dragon Pirates stationed here. After solving it easily, Ron came to the Dragon Paradise and found the treasure they had stolen. He has not forgotten what he promised Zoro before. In the original book, Zoro didn't spend anything to buy the knife, but since he paid for it himself, Ron would not fail to save some. The most important thing is that he also needs to prepare enough Baileys to buy devil fruit. Whether it's Nami, Usopp or anyone else, if he meets the right devil fruit, he won't choose to let it go. It didn't take long for Ron to find the location of the Dragon Pirates' treasure. There are treasures piled up throughout the camp. A rough calculation is that the value must be more than 100 million belly. This is also normal. How could the Dragon Pirates have no savings when they have been here for so many years? Ron found a big box and moved all the treasures into it. Suddenly, Ron's footsteps stopped. After transferring the treasure, he actually saw a knife in the tent. The scabbard of this knife was a little worn, but at the first glance, Ron could tell that it was not bad. Subconsciously, Ron picked it up and pulled it out without hesitation. Jung. The sword chant resounded, and a black blade with a lavender glow appeared in front of Ron's eyes. Good knife. Seeing this scene, Ron's eyes flashed. This knife is definitely a famous knife. Although I don't know what level of knife it is, the value is definitely not bad. Very good. Before I got the 7-star sword, I had a substitute. With the corner of his mouth raised, Ron sheathed the knife and hung it on his waist. Immediately afterwards, he raised the huge treasure box in his hand and walked out of the Dragon Paradise, and then burned it with a fire. After doing all this, Ron held up the treasure box and left the place completely. Early the next morning, Ron and his group gathered at the harbor. Last night, Nami had completely buried the people in Kokoja village. This time, the group did not intend to stay any longer, preparing for continued adventures. Brother Zoro, we have to leave too. Brother Zoro, we are going to rescue the people in this area who are oppressed by pirates. At this time, Johnny and Joseph came to Zoro's side and spoke firmly. After seeing the situation in Kokoja village, they all knew that the dragon pirates were not the only pirate group controlled by rats. Although not as good as the dragon pirates, they still control many islands, villages and towns. Therefore, they did not intend to continue following Ron and others, but planned to stay and deal with the pirates in East Blue. Good. Nodding, Zoro didn't refuse. After looking at Johnny and Joseph, he said, then you be careful. Also, if you are asked about the things here, they will all say that we did it. You are pirate hunters, so you can't put a bounty on your head. These words were immediately recognized by Luffy and others. Although Johnny and Joseph were also involved in yesterday's incident, after all, they are not pirates, and there is no reward order. If they are involved in this incident, the consequences will be disastrous. After a brief conversation, Ron and his party did not linger, leaving behind the small boat sent by the merchant, and they continued to move forward on the Mary. As they left, Johnny and Joseph also came to the boat and drove the boat out of the area. After everyone left, the sea suddenly shook. Immediately afterwards, the seawater rolled, and a huge manatee could be seen slowly emerging from the water. Arlong, Zalba, and everyone, looking at the island in front of him, Moomoo's eyes were filled with tears. It is also a member of the dragon pirates, but it has always been hidden in the sea. He already knew what happened yesterday, but he had absolutely no ability to help or change. He didn't even dare to rise from the bottom of the sea until Ron and others left this place. But soon, Momo's eyes showed determination and hatred, and he said, I won't let them go. The Straw Hat Pirates, I will definitely let them bury you together. I will go back to find Boss Jinbei now and ask him to avenge you. After saying that, Momo didn't stay anymore and sank into the sea again, and his figure disappeared. Ron and others did not know about all this. Even Ron ignored Moomoo's presence at the moment. After all, it was just a manatee, and it didn't appear on the island, so it was really hard to remember. But at this moment, the melee was also extremely dignified. Ron, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Nami, Usopp gathered together. In the area in front of them, the Marine 6 Styles cheat book that Ron had captured was placed there. Everyone, this is the secret book of Marine 6 Styles. Do you want to practice it? After a while, Ron spoke first. The Marine 6 styles are divided into Shave, Moonwalk, Tempest Kick, Gunfinger, Paper Arts and Iron Body. They have different functions, but they can also forge themselves in all aspects and improve their strength. Moonwalk can move in the air for a short period of time, and Shao can burst out several times faster in an instant. Gunfinger and Tempest Kick are both offensive skills, while Paper Arts and Iron Body are defensive skills. And once you have mastered all the Marine 6 styles to perfection, you can practice the 6 styles, and the 6 Kings Spear and life will be returned. The 6 Kings Spear gathers all its power together to launch an attack, erupting with extremely terrifying power. Returning life is a unique skill to save life. As long as the injury is not fatal, it can be quickly repaired. Mid-Autumn Festival and National Day Family Feedback. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Grab a deposit now. Activity time, September 29th to October 6th. Knit midi dress. Rib knit round neck midi dress with long sleeves, featuring an ASIM. Chapter 55 The Fury of Naval Headquarters arrives at Loguetown. Gouda, after listening to Ron's story, Usopp swallowed his saliva and then said, I'll learn. But I feel like I can't learn everything. I plan to specialize in shaving, moonwalk and iron body. After all, I am a sniper, Tempest Kick. I don't need the ability to point a gun. Hearing this, Ron nodded. As Usopp said, finger grabbing and Tempest Kick have no value or meaning to him. But iron body. Thinking of the ability called the 6 style sewer in the original work, almost anyone who uses the iron body will be defeated. Especially after Hockey's willingness appears in the future, Armament Hockey's defense is defense in the true sense, and iron body is completely a walking sandbag. Thinking of this, Ron said, then you can practice shaving, moonwalk and paper arts. I've seen iron body. It's all about physical fitness. Your training is just a living target and there's no point in it. On the contrary, paper arts, once practiced successfully, can completely avoid many fatal attacks. Good. Upon hearing this, Usopp nodded immediately. He did not doubt Ron's recommendation. After all, with Ron's strength and vision, what he recommended must be better. As for iron body, dogs don't train. Then I'll learn how to shave and point a gun at you. At this time, Nami spoke weakly. After experiencing this incident, Nami also realized her own weakness. Similarly, she also wants to have a certain level of strength, not to mention helping Ron and others too much, but at least she won't become Lulu. The speed of shaving is not only good for attacking, but also speeds up escape. When you learn to point a gun, it can be considered as having enough attack power. I just need to learn moonwalk and shave, Zoro said calmly. I will major in swordsmanship. Marine 6 styles does not have much appeal to me. However, the abilities of moonwalk and shave can also make up for my shortcomings, and I will work hard to master them. Hearing this, Ron nodded. As Zoro said, there is no need for him to specialize in Marine 6 styles. Among the Marine 6 styles, Shao and Moonwalk can enhance some strength, but the rest are not of much value to him. Even 6 styles life returns. With the blessing of Zoro's special physique, the value of this thing is also greatly reduced. I can practice them all now. At this time, Luffy suddenly said, although I have activated the second gear, my physical skills are indeed not very good. If first can learn Marine 6 styles, then I will definitely be stronger. And my grandfather also said that Marine 6 styles seems to be a very powerful physical technique. As soon as these words came out, Zoro and others looked at Luffy in surprise. I really didn't expect that God-tier Luffy would actually make such a choice and study all in Marine 6 styles. When did he become so serious? Good, on the contrary, Ron said with great appreciation at this moment. Marine 6 styles is indeed one of the most outstanding physical skills in the world. Luffy and I are in a similar situation. We are both ferocious who focus on close combat, so we need to complete the Marine 6 styles training. But I also practice swordsmanship, and I think swordsmanship is stronger when combined with my fruit. After practicing Marine 6 styles to achieve great success, as long as you can understand the return of life, its value will not be much. After all, my resilience is indeed not very good. If I can master the return of life, then this shortcoming can be repaired. Having said this, Ron's eyes flashed with helplessness. Who doesn't want to get an invincible devil fruit, but he starts off as a weak chicken, so Paramecia is his only choice. The only pity is that his Paramecia is not Luffy's rubber fruit, and it cannot be transformed into Zone Everyone fruit Phantom Beast species in the later stage. Thinking of this, Ron didn't hesitate, picked up the Marine 6 styles training manual and said, then let's start remembering what we need to practice. Destroy it after remembering it. After all, we got it from Marine. We don't want to spread the word that we have practiced it. If we lose it and someone else gets it, Marine will launch a series of hunts for us all. Good, good. Hearing this, Luffy, Zoro and others also nodded. Immediately afterwards, a group of people began to memorize the contents of the Marine 6 styles manual. Of course, except for Ron and Luffy who needed to memorize them all, the rest of them individually wrote down the parts they needed to practice. After doing all this, Ron and his team didn't hesitate and started practicing directly. What? Audacious in the extreme, how audacious. A few days later, an angry roar echoed throughout Naval headquarters. The news that Colonel Mouse and others were all dead has spread. Unlike after Menka and others were killed, Marine didn't pay too much attention to it. After all, Marine did something wrong in that matter, and offering a reward to Ron and others was to show his attitude. But this time is different. Rat is the younger brother of Weasel, and his father is a CP officer. This incident directly caused everything to change. After Weasel got the information, he immediately blocked the information and even directly tampered with it. Because he knew that Luffy was Garp's grandson, Weasel's report only said that the villagers of Kokoja were killed by the Dragon Pirates. After that, the Dragon Pirates and the Straw Hat Pirates fought, and the Dragon Pirates were killed. The Straw Hat Pirates were completely wiped out, and then Colonel Mouse was ordered to go to the rescue, but he was also killed by the Straw Hat Pirates. At the same time, because all the people of the Rat were dead, the Weasel directly destroyed all the things it had done. This also led to Colonel Mouse being portrayed as a hero who sacrificed his life valiantly. It was because of this that Sengoku was so angry when he got the news. Garp. It's your grandson again. After getting angry, Sengoku turned to look at Garp, who was eating senbei, and couldn't help but roared. Look what he did. Colonel Mouse and more than 300 Marines were killed by them all like this. It's really heartbreaking. Hearing this, Garp was also a little embarrassed at the moment. If what Meng Ka was doing was excusable, then this matter was indeed overdone. Okay, Sengoku. At this time, a voice came. Immediately afterwards, GU Vice Admiral pushed the door open and entered. After glancing at the angry Sengoku and the embarrassed Garp, he continued, the matter is somewhat different from what the Weasel reported. As she said that, she handed the document in her hand to Sengoku and Garp and said, the mouse and others were indeed killed by Garp's grandson and the others, but the mouse himself was not a good person. The things he did were even worse than Menka's, too much. Although Weasel covered it up immediately, my people still got a lot of information to pass back. That rat is so rotten. He actually controls the islands, villages and people within the sea area controlled by the pirate group, and exchanges treasures from them. If he violates the rules, he will be killed by the pirates he controls. As Vice Admiral he spoke, a smile appeared on Pooh's face. At least this can prove that his grandson did not kill innocent people indiscriminately. The reason why he was killed was entirely because these Marines were scum. Asshole. Sengoku was even more angry. If the killing of Marine by the Straw Hat Pirates had made people angry before, then after knowing what the mouse had done, the roar in his heart reached the ultimate level. What's more, Weasel actually made a false report, and even he was deceived, which made Sengoku extremely angry inside. We can't go on like this. Taking a deep breath, Sengoku suddenly said, Crane, get ready. Mobilize a group of Vice Admiral, Rear Admiral and go to sea for me to enter the 4 seas and completely eliminate those marine scum. Every one of them is simply lawless. They have deceived their superiors and deceived their subordinates to such an extent. What is the difference between the behavior of mice and those of pirates? That's it for New World. Grand Line and Sahai are the areas under our marine supervision. Similar things must not continue to happen. Good. Hearing this, Vice Admiral Crane nodded. Then, she hesitated and said, what about the Straw Hat Pirate's bounty? Although I am a little sorry about this matter, just like Menka before, it must not be reported truthfully, otherwise our marine's prestige will be greatly damaged. This, opening his mouth, Sengoku looked at Garp beside him awkwardly. After all, this matter was ultimately caused by corruption within Marine. But under the current circumstances, as Vice Admiral he said, it is indeed not possible to spread information to the outside world. Taking a deep breath, Sengoku said directly, the bounty for Captain Straw Hat Pirates has been increased to 40 million Baileys. Ron's bounty increased to 48 million Baileys, Zoro bounty increased to 15 million Belly. Nami's bounty increased to 5 million Baileys, Sanji has a bounty of 5 million Baileys. Usopp has a bounty of 2 million Baileys. Zero, please give me flowers, Zero. Okay, I'll get ready right now. Nodding, Crane Vice Admiral did not linger, turned around and left in a hurry. This matter is of great importance, and Marine must handle it as soon as possible, otherwise the corruption problem will be spread and the consequences will be disastrous. Ron and others did not know about all this. At this moment, they had arrived outside Loguetown on the Mary. Looking around, there are many pirate ships docked throughout Loguetown, and many pirates have entered them. After their ship found a remote area to dock, Ron and his party also walked off. After briefly assigning tasks, Ron looked at Zoro aside and said, Zoro, follow me. We've arrived at Loguetown. I'm going to buy you those 2 knives that you've been thinking about for a long time. Good. Hearing this, Zoro also nodded. At this moment, he looked very expectant and excited. After all, ever since his sword was destroyed, he has only had 1 sword. Now that he can finally complete it, it means that he can start to practice the 2-sword style, or even strengthen the 3-sword style. Immediately afterwards, Ron and his group parted ways. They need to buy supplies. After all, if they set off from Loguetown, they will then head to the Grand Line. If your own supplies are insufficient, accidents may easily occur on the way. As Luffy galloped, Ron and Zoro advanced side by side and soon arrived at the weapon shop. Upon entering, you will see densely packed weapons such as swords, guns, and sticks. .00. What do the 2 guests want to buy? At this time, the owner of the weapons store also noticed the appearance of the 2 men, and immediately came forward to ask. At this moment, the boss's eyes were full of eagerness. For no other reason than because the moment he entered, he was already attracted by the treasure box that Ron was carrying behind him. Although the treasure chest is already small, its size shows that the items contained in it are valuable. The most important thing was that he saw that the knives on Ron and Zoro were extraordinary. As the owner of a weapons store and a collector of famous swords, he immediately recognized these 2 swords as famous swords. Famous sword. Without any nonsense, Ron said straightforwardly, take out the famous knife in your shop. If it wasn't a famous sword, we wouldn't like it either. Okay, guest. Hearing this, instead of being angry, the owner of the weapons store was extremely excited. He guessed correctly. Ron and Zoro in front of me are really powerful swordsmen, and they come for famous swords. Without hesitation, he spoke quickly. Both guests, please wait a moment, I will go get it now. After saying that, he turned around and hurried towards the back room. At this moment, Ron and Zoro were walking around the weapons store. Found it. After walking a few steps, Ron saw a bamboo basket with a knife in it. The most important thing is that one of the targets this time, 3rd generation Kitetsu, is placed there. Thinking of this, Ron stepped forward and picked up 3rd generation Ghost, looked at Zoro and said, Zoro, look at it. This knife is not simple. With that said, Ron threw it directly to Zoro. Oh, Zoro was stunned, and then pulled out the 3rd generation Kitetsu without hesitation. The next second, the pitch-black blade emitted a chill, causing the temperature of the entire store to drop a lot. Good knife. For a moment, Zoro's eyes lit up. He can be sure that the sword in front of him is also a famous sword, and it is very suitable for him. Thinking of this, Zoro also had a smile on his face. That's great, Ron. This knife is very good, I want it. He has nothing to be embarrassed about. After all, this matter was agreed upon at the beginning. The price for Ron taking the devil fruit was to buy him 2 famous knives. Guest beware. At this time, the owner of the weapons store who took Shui away also walked out. When he saw the 3rd generation Ghost in Zoro's hand, his expression suddenly changed, and he quickly stepped forward and said, No, this knife is too dangerous. This is a demon sword that will bring bad luck to the owner. Guests must not underestimate it. Demon knife. Doom. However, Zoro was just stunned for a moment, and then became even more excited. Looking at the 3rd generation in his hand, Kitetsu said, In that case, let me see if it will choose me. After saying that, Zoro directly threw the third-generation Kitetsu away, stretched out his hand and let the blade fall off under the stunned and horrified gaze of the weapon shop owner. Chapter 56. Third-generation Kiteyuki comes to an end, Tashigi or Kuina. The next second, third-generation Kitetsu slipped around Zoro's arm and fell to the ground, directly piercing the ground. Haha, seeing this, Zoro laughed, pulled out the third-generation ghost and said, "It seems he chose me." This scene made the weapon shop owner stunned. Totally can't believe something like this happened. Then, he looked at Zoro with intense eyes, and quickly stepped forward and said, "The guest must be a powerful swordsman. Guest, what do you think of this knife?" With that said, he handed over the snow in his hand. "Is this a famous sword?" After taking a good look at it, Zoro picked it up and was very satisfied. After all, this is a famous sword, and it cannot be bought casually. Good. In response to this, the boss said enthusiastically, "This is a good and sharp knife, Snow. Although this sword is a good and quick sword, it is also a good one among the good and quick swords. If the customer wants to buy it, it will be more suitable than that day." No need. Hearing this, Zoro waved his hand and picked up third-generation Kitetsu and Yuki Adu. "I want both swords. I am a three-sword swordsman." After saying that, he looked at Ron aside and said, "Ron, is that okay?" Certainly, with a calm smile, Ron stepped forward and said, "Boss, we want these two knives. Please give us a price." Seeing that Zoro was about to take away the two knives, the boss hesitated for a moment. After all, whether it is Shueiji or the Yaodao, its own value is not low. The most important thing is that it can give people face to patronize his weapon shop. If they are all taken away now, it will be a big loss to the weapon store itself. "Boss, 933, however, before the boss could say anything else, Ron casually threw the treasure box on the ground. The next second, Ron opened the box and revealed the treasure inside. "Make a price." "This is all we have, and we still have to leave some for food." Gouda. Looking at the treasure that came into view, the boss couldn't help but swallow his saliva. At this moment, any thought or lack of consideration disappeared in an instant, and was replaced by strong enthusiasm, and he quickly said, 50 million Baileys. Yukazuki is worth 20 million belly. Although the third-generation Kiteru is a demon sword, its essential value is not inferior to that of a large sword. It's just that because of the properties of the demon sword, few people dare to hold it. It is generally worth more than 50 million. But since this little brother can subdue him, then I am willing to be a man of beauty. You only need to pay 50 million belly, and these two knives will be yours. Good. Hearing this, Enfu nodded in agreement without hesitation. He knew that the boss had already lowered the price, and it would be difficult to buy two good sharp knives with only 50 million, let alone third-generation Kitetsu and Yuki Kakeru. Without hesitation, Ron took out about 1 million Baileys from the treasure chest, and then said, "Here you go. The treasure in this is worth more than 50 million, but I don't have time to count. Since the boss is so open-minded, we are not ignorant people, so we can just leave some money to buy material things." Okay. Hearing this, the board was instantly overjoyed. He could also tell that the value of the treasures in it exceeded 50 million. He was not sure how much, but it was at least several million. Although he appreciates Zoro's initiative to offer profits, he will not stupidly refuse the money delivered to his door. For a moment, the boss rushed to close the treasure box, then pulled the box towards the back room. Joke. He doesn't want to expose such a huge amount of wealth. "Hey, is that a famous sword in your hands?" Suddenly, a surprised voice came from behind. Following the sound, it could be seen that Tashigi had also arrived in the shop, and was curiously staring at the knife in Zoro's hand and the matching knife on Ron's waist. Kuina. Seeing the person coming, Zoro's pupils shrank, his eyes full of disbelief. After all, the girl in front of me is so similar to my childhood sweetheart, the only difference is that she has an extra pair of glasses. At the same time, Ron's eyes were also focused on Kuina. To be honest, he was also very curious. Is the Tashigi in front of me Kuina? Although the original book tells that Kuina is dead, and the follow-up Zoro seems to deny that she is Kuina. But Ron also didn't admit it. Although there was denial in the original work, it was also very far-fetched. On the contrary, judging from Zoro's subsequent attitude towards Tashigi, it is not just because the two are similar. The main thing is, according to the records of the original work, Kuina was very strong when she was a child. At least at the same time, Zoro was always suppressed by Kuina. Even if he gradually became invincible as he grew up, Kuina's strength at that time was at least at the level of the elite soldiers of Naval headquarters. How could someone with such strength be killed by a whetstone? The most important thing is, does he know that Zoro's master Koshiro has a very good relationship with the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Dragon? Even during the time when Kuina's accident happened, the She-Male King followed Drago and appeared in Shimotsuki Island. What does this mean? This means that there is a high possibility of saving Kuina with the treatment method of the She-Male King. Rather than saying that Kuina is dead, he prefers that Kuina is in a state of suspended animation. Koshiro and Zoro didn't see it, but Nobu saw that she was a she-male and drove away. With the treatment method of the She-Male King, it will not be a problem to cure Kuina, but because it was hit on the head, it also caused Kuina to suffer from vision loss. What happens after that is better understood. That is, after Kuina's death, Zoro encountered more exciting and crazy training, and even started practicing the three-sword style. Because of this, Koshiro probably didn't want to break Zoro's temper, so he chose to hide the truth about Kuina's death and let Zoro continue to grow like this. As for Kuina, she was either sent to the Revolutionary Army, or Koshiro found someone else to raise her. If this is the case, then it makes sense that Tashigi was born in an ordinary family in the original work, and even becoming a Marine ensign at a young age is also traceable. Although the younger generation in the original work are all strong, in fact they are also a very small part of them. Except for those with abilities who have eaten devil fruit, those who can reach the rank of lieutenant at a young age cannot be achieved casually by those who practice physical skills and swordsmanship. Kuina? Who is that? With a trace of confusion on his face, Tashigi looked at Zoro in confusion. Isn't it? Hearing this, Zoro looked a little stiff. But soon, he calmed down and said, sorry, I recognized the wrong person. You look a lot like my childhood friend, oh. Nodding, Tashigi didn't pay attention, but stared at the knife in Zoro's hand and said, can I see the knife in your hand? Are these all famous swords? Good, Zoro did not refuse. Not only did he hand out Yukigashiro and third-generation Kitetsu, he even took out the Wado Ichimonji from his waist and handed them to Tashigi. Obviously, even though Tashigi denied that she was Kuina, Zoro still wanted to make sure. Thanks. Seeing this, Tashigi smiled and immediately picked up the knife and examined it excitedly. She even took out a book containing famous swords. As they compared each other, Tashigi's exclamations continued. Wow, this is a good and quick move. This sword is even more powerful. It's actually the legendary demon sword, third-generation Kitetsu. Is this the legendary great knife, Wado Ichimonji? However, at this moment, Ron and Zoro were also staring at Tashigi. When she took Yukashi and third-generation Kitetsu, neither of them cared much. But that is different from the word Dao. As Tashigi picked it up, he unsheathed it subconsciously. At this moment, a trace of nostalgia quietly appeared on Tashigi's face. Although it was fleeting, it was noticed by both Zoro and Ron. Thank you so much. At this time, Tashigi picked up the three knives and handed them to Zoro. Really, for a moment, the corners of Ron's mouth rose. Although it was just a look for a moment, he could be sure that the person in front of him was 80% sure to be Kuina. But what he was not sure about was whether she had lost her memory or just changed her identity. If it is the former, then many things are reasonable. But if it's the latter, then Kuina, no, Tashigi now is probably a member of the Revolutionary Army. After all, it can be seen from the original work that Smoker became a Marine Vice Admiral 2 years later, and Tashigi, as an adjutant, has also become a Commodore. You are welcome. Zoro also showed a hint of complexity at this moment. He also saw the difference, although he didn't care about the others. But the person in front of him was probably his childhood sweetheart. How could he admit his mistake? How could he not care? However, since the latter did not admit it, Zoro was not a reckless person. After reaching out and taking the three swords, he said, are you also a swordsman? Yes. Nodding, Tashigi smiled slightly, took out the sword around his waist and said, this is my sword. Shigur. It is also a famous sword. Although it is a good and fast sword, it is not inferior to Shui Zai. Shigur. Looking at the knife in Tashigi's hand, Zoro's pupils shrank. As a childhood playmate, when he saw this knife, he couldn't help but recall the knife Kuina used when he was a child. For a moment, Zoro couldn't help but fell into silence. Miss Tashigi. Seeing this, Ron knew that the two knew each other. Although one denies and one vetoes, but there is no doubt that from the moment Shigur appeared, Zoro's last doubts had been solved. But now is not the time for the two to recognize each other. Although she doesn't know the specific situation, it is better for Inseki to exist in this identity. Thinking of this, Ron stepped forward and handed over his knife. I see that the book in your hand contains information about many famous knives. Is there any information about my knife? Ron was also curious about this. After all, this sword was undoubtedly a famous sword, but it didn't appear in the original work, and he didn't recognize it either. Let me see. Hearing this, Tashigi immediately looked away from Zoro, and then looked attracted to Ron's knife. Take it to the desk to compare and search. Found it. After a moment, Tashigi raised his head and looked at Ron with a surprised look on his face and said, the strongest good sword, blood. It is said that it is not inferior to the existence of the great knife. It is said that after killing the opponent, it can absorb the opponent's blood and grow. It was originally the weakest good sword, but after its previous owner massacred people, it has become the strongest good sword, not even inferior to ordinary great swords. Hearing this, both Ron and Zoro were shocked. I really didn't expect this knife to have such origin and value. Especially Zoro, the look he was looking at Shui at this moment was even more intense. After all, it is comparable to the existence of a great sharp knife, but it is not comparable to that of ordinary good sharp knives. Okay. Seeing this, Ron waved his hand and then said, my eyes will fall in if I look at it again. Zoro, I can't give you this sword yet. When you become a swordsman, I will give it to you as a gift. Real. Hearing this, Zoro was excited. After becoming a swordsman, Ron will give this sword to himself, which is a great thing. No swordsman can resist a famous sword. No swordsman can refuse the strongest sword. Certainly, smiling calmly, Ron said with a smile. I got a piece of news some time ago that there is a knife that suits me very well in the Grand Line, and I will snatch it when the time comes. I'll help you. Hearing this, Zoro spoke without hesitation. Although I don't know what kind of knife Ron is interested in, where it is, and what the strength of his opponent is. But Zoro said these words without hesitation, and this scene made Tashigi on the side smile. But soon, she stopped smiling, handed the knife to Ron and said, Sir, I have finished reading it and will give it back to you. Good. Nodding, Ron took the knife and hung it on his waist. Toot toot. At this moment, the sound of the phone in Insaki's arms rang. Seeing this, Tashigi quickly took out his phone and said, Moxie, this is Tashigi. Tashigi Ensign, come to the square. At this time, a rapid voice came from the phone. There are pirates making trouble. There are 2 waves of pirates fighting. Colonel Smoker has already gone. Let's go there quickly. The people who broke out this time were Buggy the Clown and Straw Hat. The bounty on Straw Hat Boy has been raised to 40 million Baileys a few days ago. His threat is extremely huge. Colonel Smoker is determined to capture them all. Yes. Hearing this, Tashigi was shocked. He glanced at Ron and Zoro subconsciously, then turned and hurriedly ran towards the outside world. Luffy is causing trouble again. It's Buggy. At the same time, Zoro's face became serious. Especially when his opponent was Buggy, he couldn't help but recall the feeling of powerlessness he felt in the small town. Subconsciously, Zoro looked at Ron and said, Ron, let's go help too. We can't let anything happen to Luffy. Good. After agreeing, Ron knew he couldn't stay any longer. After all, Smoker was Logia and they couldn't do anything with their current methods. He immediately followed Zoro and ran towards the outside world. Chapter 57. The Plaza. War breaks out and the Buggy pirates are arrested. Straw Hat Boy, die. In the execution table area, Buggy and Luffy started fighting. Different from the original work. Luffy still came to the execution table and caused a commotion, but was not successfully attacked by Buggy. After all, Luffy's strength has been greatly improved now, and Buggy's sneak attack was directly avoided by him. This also led to a complete fight between the 2 sides. Buggy was extremely angry because of what happened last time, so he acted much more forcefully this time. At the beginning, Luffy was indeed suppressed and even beaten to the point of being defeated. However, with the opening of second gear, Luffy's situation changed directly. Luffy in second gear is actually able to perform Marine 6 Styles Shave and Iron Body. This also caused the flying knife in Buggy's hand to be unable to break the defense. After a round of fighting, the 2 sides became more and more courageous as they fought, and the fight even became more intense. In this case, Sanji, Usopp and Nami also came to the venue. At this moment, they were also fighting against the leaders of the Buggy pirates. But compared to Luffy, Sanji and others, their strength is much weaker. He was directly defeated by Kabaji and others, and was even kidnapped by the Buggy pirates. Afterwards, Kabaji and others began to cooperate with Buggy to besiege Luffy, and the situation became more and more dangerous. Kabaji and others are not weak in strength, and with the addition of Alvida who has just joined the pirate group, this also makes Luffy a little confused even if he turns on the second gear. At this moment, a burst of footsteps sounded. Looking around, you can see a large number of Marines appearing in the square. The citizens of Loguetown have also left, and a dense crowd of Marines gathered here, directly surrounding the entire square. However, because the battle between the 2 sides was not over yet, these Marines did not bother them and did not even take the next step. What happened? At this time, an angry voice sounded. Looking through the sound, Smoker, holding a cigar in his mouth, was striding towards him. Colonel Smoker. Seeing the person coming, all the Marines around him breathed a sigh of relief. Oh 5 if nothing else, it's because Luffy, Buggy and others are too strong and cannot be compared to them. There are even several demon fruit powers, which makes them dare not act rashly against them. But it's different now. Smoker's arrival gave them confidence. After all, Smoker is a Marine colonel, and even Logia's demon fruit power. Without seastone weapons and hockey, Logia is almost invincible. A captain quickly walked up to Smoker and said, it's the Buggy pirates and the Straw Hat pirates who are fighting. But their strength is not weak, we dare not act rashly. Especially that Straw Hat Boy. At this point, the captain hesitated for a moment, and then whispered, he knows Marine 6 styles. Although he only knows how to shave an iron body, he is definitely an orthodox Marine 6 styles. And according to the information we have received before, it seems that the members of the Straw Hat Pirates still have Marine 6 styles, but almost all of them have shaved heads, and they have only been practicing for a short time, so their proficiency is not enough. What? Hearing this, Smoker's pupils shrank. A pirate knows Marine 6 styles, which is not good news. Not to mention that now the entire pirate group knows it. Even if they fail, they're still Marine 6 styles. That is Marine's advanced physical technique, a technique that can only be taught after entering the naval headquarters and gaining recognition. Now it has been learned by pirates, which means that Marine 6 styles has been leaked, and even The Straw Hat Pirates. In an instant, Smoker's face became extremely gloomy, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Go and take down all those guys, including the Buggy Pirates. Marine 6 Styles has been leaked. This matter cannot be underestimated. They must not be allowed to escape. As for the guy who is fighting, leave it to me." After saying that, Smoker took off the Jusho from his back and walked straight towards the area where Luffy, Buggy and others were fighting. "Yes." Hearing this, the captain immediately responded. Then, without hesitation, he waved his hand and immediately led the surrounding Marines into action. The focus was to capture the crew members of the Straw Hat Pirates and Buggy Pirates. For a while, the fighting broke out again. The members of the Buggy Pirates were fighting with Marine. Sanji and others were tied up before and were now being guarded by Marine in an area. "Pirate, give me residence, one end grid has been learned in the field." Looking at the two sides fighting, he immediately yelled, "This is Loguetown, an important place guarded by my Marine, and it is not something that you mere pirates can make trouble." As soon as these words came out, Luffy, Buggy and others who were fighting all moved. The next second, the two sides separated, but their eyes were also looking at Smoker. Colonel Marine Smoker. Kabaji's expression changed. He tightened the long knife in his hand and said, "Captain Buggy, it's bad, we are surrounded by Marines." Hearing this, Buggy also looked ugly. After all, he just wanted to cause trouble for Luffy or even kill him. But he had no intention of provoking Marine, especially such a large-scale Marine. "Sanji, Nami, call back." At this time, Luffy noticed Nami and others who were arrested not far away. For a moment, he didn't care about the fight with Buggy and others, and immediately ran towards the distance, shouting, "I'm here to save you now." Where to go? However, before Luffy could run over, Smoker's angry voice could be heard. The next second, the smoke changed, and Smoker's figure appeared in front of Luffy, and he took out his hand without hesitation. However, Luffy, who was in second gear, was actually hit. The moment he sensed the danger, Luffy started shaving in second gear and disappeared instantly, causing Smoker's attack to fail. Immediately afterwards, his figure appeared in the area where Sanji and others were, and he launched an attack on the Marines next to him without hesitation. Rubber hyphenation point machine gun. Ah. In an instant, the Marines guarding Sanji and the three were knocked to the ground, and Luffy quickly untied the three. Shave? At the same time, Smoker looked even more grim as he looked at the failed attack. For no other reason than because Luffy was very skillful in shaving, especially in second gear. The speed even surprised Smoker. Immediately afterwards, his anger became more intense. A pirate actually mastered Marine 6 styles, and to do it in front of him so grandly is simply a huge provocation. For a moment, Smoker was furious and turned around to capture Luffy. "Come die. Go to hell." However, several attacks came quietly at this moment. It can be seen that Buggy, Kabaji, Mochi and Alvida launched an attack on Smoker the moment they noticed that he was distracted. The next second, the weapons of the four fell on Smoker. Bang! The body exploded, and smoke began to appear around Smoker. How can it be? Impossible, this is Logia. Almost instantly, Buggy and others also widened their eyes. I can't believe that the Smoker in front of me is actually Logia demon fruit power. Including Buggy, everyone already had the intention to quit at this moment. Joke. This is Logia, who is almost invincible in the small East Blue. Buggy Pirates. At this time, Smoker also came to his senses, looking at Buggy and others who were attacking him. The anger in his eyes could no longer be concealed. Smoke and entanglement. With a low growl, Smoker's body turned. It directly entangled Buggy and others, and the smoke trapped them all in place. Immediately afterwards, Smoker's 10-hand thrust fell directly on the four people. Ah! With a scream, Alvida immediately lost strength and collapsed to the ground. After all, it is demon fruit power. She has no resistance at all when faced with the sea stone Jusho. Buggy has a panoramic view of this scene. Almost instantly, his expression changed. Unfortunately, before Buggy could take action, those 10 hands fell on him. Ah! With a scream, Buggy also stepped into Alvida's retreat, losing his strength and falling to the ground. As for Kabaji and Mochi on the side, because it wasn't demon fruit power, Smoker didn't care at all and used Smoke Fruit's ability to directly trap him to death. Unlike in the original book, Smoker concentrated on hunting down Luffy, causing no one to notice that Buggy was demon fruit power. At this moment, Smoker already knows that Buggy, Luffy and Alvida are demon fruit powers. After successfully subduing the two men, Smoker turned his head and said, "Come here, put seastone handcuffs on these two guys." Yes. Hearing this, 2 Lieutenant Junior grades came forward not far away. He quickly took out the precious seastone handcuffs from his arms and handcuffed Buggy and Alvida directly. As for Mochi and Kabaji, both of them were also tied up. After all, they were unable to resist under Smoker's power. After doing all this, Smoker did not stay, turned around and flew towards where Luffy and others were. "Straw Hat, none of you can leave." Seeing this situation, Luffy's expression changed. He also didn't expect that Buggy and others would be arrested so quickly. And it seems that there is no resistance at all, which means that the Smoker in front of him is really strong. For a moment, Luffy didn't care about anything else and said quickly, Sanji, Nami, Usopp, settle. Retreat, it's not a good time to stay here. With that said, he didn't hesitate and rushed forward to confront Smoker. Rubber rubber pistol. Rubber rubber bazooka. In an instant, Luffy and Smoker were fighting together. Because he had seen Buggy and Alvida lose resistance after being touched by the 10 hands, Luffy's attack at this moment was mainly aimed at Smoker's body, and he consciously avoided the attack from the 10 hands. This also resulted in Smoker being unable to take down Luffy in a short period of time, and the two sides immediately fell into a fierce fight. Seeing this situation, Sanji and the other three hesitated. But soon, Nami came back to his senses and said, withdraw. We are no match for these Marines, and we can't help Luffy. If I stay, I'll just become a burden and leave here as soon as possible, so that Luffy can have hope of evacuating 770. Good. Hearing this, Sanji and Usopp also nodded. Immediately afterwards, the three people began to break out towards the outside world. Where to go? Pirate, rest and escape. Seeing this situation, how could the Marines around allow such a thing to happen? Almost instantly, the captain, several lieutenant junior grades and more than a dozen ensigns attacked the Sanji trio. After all, the situation is now stable. All the Buggy pirates have been captured, including Captain Buggy. The rest are the Straw Hat Pirates, and they are still members of the Straw Hat Pirates who have secretly learned Marine 6 styles. How could they allow this group of people to escape in such a big way? Ruined. Marine, Sanji, Nami and Usopp were all in despair as they watched the attack. They can also feel that this group of people is strong, and there may be a glimmer of hope for them to fight alone. But what we are facing now is the siege of more than a dozen people. Even the surrounding Marines have completely blocked the area. It is too difficult to escape, and it is almost impossible to escape. No, 3 swordsman-style thousand troubled winds. At the critical moment, a low roar sounded. The next second, dozens of sword energy attacked from a distance, landing directly in the area in front of Sanji and others, blocking the dozen or so Marines who were chasing them. Following the sound, Ron and Zoro had also hurried to the venue. Ron, Zoro. Seeing the visitor, Sanji, Nami and Usopp, who were in despair, were all overjoyed. Especially Usopp, who was in tears at this moment. Too dangerous. It's just too dangerous. If Ron and Zoro hadn't arrived, the three of them would have been torn into pieces by those Marines. Chidori Ryu. At the same time, Ron also took action boldly. As the arc shot out from the ground, it directly affected the Marines in an area. In an instant, the Marines were so shocked that they lost their resistance and collapsed on the ground, with white smoke coming out of their bodies. They were in extremely bad condition. After doing all this, Ron did not hesitate, looked directly at the area not far away and shouted, Sanji, take Nami and Usopp away. Wait for us at the dock and get ready to go to sea. This matter is not easy to handle, especially Smoker is Logia. So Ron prefers to evacuate. Even if he can defeat these guys, it is actually not necessary. Killing some Marine scum won't be a big problem, but if you want to massacre normal Marines unscrupulously, the danger will be too great. The current strength of the Straw Hat Pirates can offset it. Can't stop it. Chapter 58 Timely Rescue, Ron vs Smoker. Good. Hearing this, Sanji nodded. He didn't insist on anything, it wasn't fear or fear. It's because Nami and Usopp are indeed weak. If they don't leave at this time, they may be caught or even die in the battle. The most important thing is that he also saw the power of Smoker. As far as the current situation is concerned, only after they evacuate this place can Ron and others have the possibility of evacuating. Thinking of this, Sanji didn't stay any longer. He grabbed Nami and Usopp from the left and right, and ran towards the outside world at a very fast speed. Stop, don't run. Damn pirates, I won't let you escape. This scene directly stimulated the Marines not far away. One by one, while avoiding Zoro's attack, they also sped up and moved forward. Your opponent is me. Seeing this, Zoro did not hesitate, took out Wado Yimon and put it in his mouth. He held 3rd generation Kitetsu and Yukazaki in both hands and stood directly in front of the Marine lieutenant level officers. At the same time, the Marine soldiers surrounding them also pursued the Sanji trio. But Ron didn't stop. Without the captain level soldiers chasing after them, it would be impossible for Sanji and the others to be their opponents, and it would be impossible to stop them from leaving. The priority right now is still Smoker. Within the entire area, the only person he was truly afraid of was the other party. Without Smoker, they could easily leave Loguetown. Thinking of this, Ron looked towards the distant area. At this moment, Zoro is already fighting with those Marine lieutenants. After adding 2 new swords, Zoro's strength has been greatly improved. At this moment, he is directly suppressing them with his own power. It was Luffy instead, because the opponent was Logia, all his attacks were ineffective. Although he can barely compete with Smoker, he is obviously at a disadvantage and may even be defeated if he is not careful. This is no joke. After all, the Jusho in Smoker's hand is a weapon mixed with sea stone. Etc. 10 hands. Suddenly, Ron's pupils shrank. He stared at the 10 hands in Smoker's hand and said, at this stage, we haven't mastered hockey yet, so we must be helpless with Logia. But the 10 hands are different. Once you get them, Smoker's so-called Logia advantage will be gone. And the value of sea stone is indeed not low. If you can get a few sea stone handcuffs and temper them into knives, then. At this moment, the corners of Ron's mouth rose. He has already thought of a solution, so there is no need to worry too much. Without any hesitation, Ron threw it directly towards the area where Luffy was. Crackling, the electric arc jumped, and Ron's figure instantly appeared on the battlefield. Chidori blade. Birds chirped loudly, and the Chidori blade covered the bloody blade, and then directly cut off Smoker's body under Ron's control. But it was Logia after all. With the elementalization of Smoker, she directly avoided the attack, but her attack on Luffy was also interrupted. Luffy was stunned when he saw the person coming, and then said with a joyful expression, "You are finally here." As he spoke, Luffy was obviously panting. Obviously, playing against Smoker during this period of time took a lot of energy, which made him unable to hold on. Luffy. Seeing this situation, Ron knew that Luffy could not continue, so he immediately said, "Leave this to me. You go help Zoro defeat those guys, and then go directly to meet Nami and the others." At this point, Ron saw Luffy hesitate to speak and knew what he was worried about, so he said directly, "Trust me." Good. Hearing this, Luffy nodded. He gave Ron a serious look and said, "Ron, we will wait for you. We will never leave until you come. This is our agreement." After saying that, Luffy did not linger, turned around and ran towards the area where Zoro was in the distance. Although he promised to evacuate, but Luffy didn't plan to leave just like that, but planned to defeat the rest of the Marines with Zoro. There are those who can't sneak up on Ron. Only in this way can Ron be truly safe. Don't even think about escaping. Seeing this, Smoker was furious. How could he allow the Straw Hat Boy to escape in front of his eyes like this? Without any hesitation, Smoker's body recovered quickly, and he picked up his 10 hands to pursue again. Cut. At this moment, Ron took action boldly, drew his sword and slashed, cutting Smoker's body open again. After all this was done, Ron stood calmly holding a knife and said, "Smoker, your opponent is me." After coming back to his senses, Smoker also turned his attention to Ron. In an instant, the anger and murderous intent in his eyes became even stronger, and he said, "You dare to appear in front of me, Marine, who has a bounty of 48 million Baileys. You are also a member of the Straw Hat Pirates, right? But what I'm curious about is, your bounty is far greater than that of Straw Hat, so why are you willing to stay on the ship instead of forming your own team?" This is not just Smoker. Including many people who know the Straw Hat Pirates are also confused. After all, it stands to reason that the captain's bounty must be of the highest level. If his own bounty exceeds that of the captain, then that person will either leave the pirate group or seek power and usurp the captain's position. But Ron obviously didn't do such a thing, which made them all feel confused and puzzled. "Why should I form my own team?" Smiling calmly, Ron knew what Smoker meant. In addition to confusion, there was even a hint of sowing discord. But how could Ron be fooled? If he is within the Straw Hat Pirates, then with Luffy's identity, no matter it is Marine, Pirates, World Government or the Revolutionary Army, he will be given 3 points of honor. But if he were to create a pirate group by himself, then what awaited him would definitely be a large-scale pursuit. Even his previous annihilation of Marine base was enough for Marine to send out general-level warriors to strangle him. The reason why they did so many things without any major incident, apart from the fact that they killed the heinous Marine, was also because of the relationship between Luffy and Garp. As long as Garp doesn't fall, Marine will have to face the Straw Hat Pirates. For example, in the original work, both Aokiji and Kizaru have encountered the Straw Hat Pirates alone. With their strength, they can easily defeat the Straw Hat Pirates, at least they can easily capture them and throw them into the Impel Down. But did they do so? No, neither Aokiji nor Kizaru. This is true even for the Marine Admiral, not to mention the other Marines. Unless he met Akainu by bad luck, how could Garp sit back and watch Akainu pursue the Straw Hat Pirates? If you remember correctly, Aokiji and Kizaru were both in the Grand Line in the original book, but Akainu before the Summit War also stayed in the New World. It is self-evident what kind of will is involved. If he set sail on his own and founded a pirate group, then these things would be enough for him to be humanely destroyed every minute he was met by Marine, and the last time he was caught and thrown into Impel Down. Thinking of this, Ron said calmly, "A bounty of 48 million Baileys is nothing. Luffy is the man who wants to become the Pirate King. Do you think I will do this kind of thing? As for our own development, I'm sorry, I don't have much ambition. Our goal is just to go out on an adventure." Even so, but Ron's goal is also to become the king of the world. However, if you want to reach such a point, it cannot be accomplished overnight. So, he still needs to continue to follow the boat. Even Ron has already planned to follow the Straw Hat Pirates to the final land of Raftel. By then, his strength should be almost enough to truly subvert the world. With the end of the Straw Hat Pirates' voyage, that will be the final step for him to become the master of the world. Yeah? Frowning slightly, Smoker didn't believe Ron's words. Although he seemed to be understated, he even gave the impression that he really didn't care about it. But for some reason, when he saw Ron for the first time, Smoker felt that he was neither a good person nor a simple person. At this moment, a series of screams attracted the attention of Ron and Smoker. Looking through the sound, you can see that all the lieutenants were injured and fell to the ground under the attacks of Luffy and Zoro. Although they did not kill anyone, Luffy and Zoro were not merciful. It would be almost impossible to recover from such an attack without a month or two. But what is surprising is that Tashigi has also arrived, currently fighting with Zoro. As for Tashigi, Zoro didn't do anything cruel, and the two of them seemed to be sparring in swordsmanship. Damn it. Seeing this situation, Smoker's face suddenly became even more ugly. Marine's defeat made him feel extremely frustrated and angry. But in the current situation, he had no choice but to do anything, and even because of Ron's obstruction, there was no possibility of support at all. For a moment, Smoker didn't care what he was thinking about. He tightened his hands and attacked Ron without hesitation. Pirate Ron, suppress you first, it's up to you. Hearing this, Ron smiled. He raised the famous sword with electric arc in his hand, and without any hesitation blocked Smoker's attack from Jusho. Fires flew everywhere, and Ron and Smoker immediately fell into a stalemate. But just for a moment, Ron also felt strenuous. Although its own strength is very strong, it is not inferior to the school level. But Smoker is a Marine colonel after all, and his own strength combined with Devil Fruit is not inferior to Commodore. Under such circumstances, it would be extremely difficult to confront Smoker head-on. It's still too weak. My hard work during this period of cultivation is still too slow. I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. After all, although Ron's strength has improved a lot during this period, he is still at the level of a captain. If you want to truly reach the school level, it cannot be accomplished overnight. But since he couldn't fight head-on, Ron didn't foolishly choose to fight to the death. With a thought, he disappeared from where he was. When Smoker's attack failed, his figure appeared next to him again, swinging the knife in his hand and cutting off Smoker's shoulder again. What a speed! What the hell did you eat, Devil Fruit? This scene immediately made Smoker's expression change drastically. Quick, too fast. If it weren't for the fact that he immediately used elementalization, Ron's knife just now would have been enough to kill him. The most important thing is that he can clearly feel that besides shaving, Ron's method is more due to the blessing of the arc all over his body. But what Devil Fruit can be so fast? And Ron doesn't look like he has the ability to forever be Logia Devil Fruit. Otherwise, the news about him would have spread all over the place long ago, and it would be impossible for Marine to still not figure out his details and clues. It's now, however, Ron had no nonsense at the moment. The moment he saw Smoker lose his mind, the arc on his body suddenly intensified. At this moment, Ron directly raised his hand and pointed it at Smoker, shouting, "Discharge." Crackling. In an instant, endless electric arcs were released from Ron's hands, directly covering the Smoker that turned into smoke, including the 20 meters in front of Ron. This is Paramecia's ultimate. It can only exert a short attack range, and cannot directly destroy the world like Logia, which is enough to destroy towns, countries, and even islands. But even so, Smoker was unable to manifest his body under the power of the discharge, and he did not dare to touch his elemental form. It can be said that at this moment, he was completely restricted by Ron. At this moment, a flash of lightning flashed in Ron's eyes, and he directly entered the super speed force mode. The next second, his figure appeared 20 meters away. In addition to the famous sword in his right hand, there was also a Jusho in his left hand. At this moment, Smoker's arm holding 10 hands exploded directly, and countless arcs spread and his body was destroyed. Fortunately, he was elementalized, otherwise the blow just now would have killed him. But at this moment, Smoker couldn't care less. His figure turned into smoke and jumped out of the lightning range. He stood in midair and stared at Ron on guard, saying, "This is your purpose? Is this your true power? Seize my 10 hands, your target is actually it?" Although he said this, Smoker was already confused inside. 10 hands roared. How could he not know the clues about his own weapons? It was precisely because he knew that he was panicking at this moment. Ron was too fast. It had already made him extremely surprised and horrified before, but after Ron turned on the super speed force mode, he was even more frightened. After all, with Jusho, his advantage of Logia Devil Fruit is gone, even. Chapter 59 Marine's Defeat. Smoker's chess move was just one step away. Haha. Otherwise how could I succeed? With the corner of his mouth raised, Ron put the knife into its sheath. After looking at the 10 hands in his hand playfully for a few times, he looked at Smoker and his eyes became playful. Logia, I know. Elementalization, the ability to be immune to all physical attacks. If you want to deal with the Logia demon fruit power, you must either master the legendary Haki or rely on Seastone weapons. Your 10 hands must be mixed with Seastone, otherwise Buggy and Alvida wouldn't have been captured by you so easily. Now that this thing is in my hands, your so-called elementalization is no longer a threat to me. Smoker, do you have any other methods? Once the items were in hand, Ron stopped pretending. After all, with the presence of 10 hands, Smoker's threat to him has been greatly reduced. To put it bluntly, if it was a life and death fight, he would still be very confident of killing it directly. This is no joke, and it's not Ron's fault. It was the sense of security and confidence that the super speed force and 10 hands gave him. Arrogant. His face darkened. Smoker didn't know what Ron meant. But now 10 hands is lost, which is also a huge loss for him. In addition, it can be seen from the previous fight that Ron has demon fruit power, and he is also extremely fast. This makes Smoker feel a little powerless. After all, even if he goes all out, his speed is not as fast as Ron's, and with the 10 hands in his hand. Yeah? Waving his hands disapprovingly, Ron said calmly. Smoker, this matter has reached such a point, why don't we each take a step back? It would not be good for either of us to continue. As long as you let go, our Straw Hat Pirates will evacuate from Loguetown immediately and will not disturb you anymore. What do you think? Although I already have the confidence to fight, but to be honest, Ron still can't underestimate Smoker. After all, he is a Logia user. If he elementally transforms in advance, even having 10 hands will be of no value or significance. After all, it has been explained in the original work that whether it is Seastone or Hockey, they are all aimed at entities, and 977 can still avoid them by elementalizing them in advance. And Smoker is really crazy, except for Ron, Luffy and others are no match at this moment. Once time becomes more and more troublesome, it will be detrimental to the Straw Hat Pirates, and it will also be detrimental to Ron. Impossible. However, how could Smoker agree? He is a dignified marine and the disciple of his predecessor Admiral Zephyr. How could he compromise with a pirate? Although he lost 10 hands, Smoker is still extremely confident in his own strength. Without any hesitation, Smoker turned into smoke and attacked Ron, angrily yelling, "Pirates, don't think that you can be unscrupulous after taking away my juju. Today you will pay for your arrogant behavior. I captured the Straw Hat Pirates. Even the 4 emperors can't save them." As he spoke, his figure had arrived in the area in front of Ron, and he raised his hand to activate his ability. Smoke White Fist. In an instant, a fist condensed in smoke attacked Ron. Ignorant of good and evil, seeing this, Ron also knew that this matter could no longer be discussed. For a moment, he no longer had the intention to talk nonsense with him. With a thought, his figure disappeared from the place in an instant. As Smoker's attack failed, Ron's figure appeared next to him, waving his 10 hands and hitting his body directly. Bang, the smoke exploded, but it still did not pose a threat to it. Obviously, Smoker was already prepared when Ron took action. And at this moment, Ron also saw that although these 10 hands were Seastone weapons, they were actually not complete. There were only Seastone inlays in the top area of the 10 hands. This also means that if you want to pose a fatal threat to him, you need Smoker to manifest his true form and touch the front area of his 10 hands to his body before he uses elemental transformation, thus completely breaking him. Smoke Fruit ability. It's really tricky, but it's not too difficult for me. With the corner of his mouth raised, Ron glanced at Smoker who was glaring at him, raised his left hand without hesitation and said, "Discharge." In an instant, lightning overflowed. Under Ron's control, the lightning released was directly reduced to a range of 1 meter around him. In an instant, the lightning exploded, covering both Ron and Smoker. As the lightning continued to rage, Smoker's face suddenly became more and more ugly. Elementalize. Although it can be immune to all attacks, this method also consumes extremely huge amounts of physical strength. Now Ron uses lightning to surge hormones in his body, forcing him to remain in an elemental state all the time. Under such circumstances, his physical strength will be greatly consumed, and even once his physical strength is exhausted, the elementalization will be broken, and even he himself will suffer a fatal blow from Ron. For a moment, Smoker became a little anxious. Subconsciously, he wanted to control the smoke to spread to the side. Want to leave? Smoker, I won't give you a chance. Seeing this situation, Ron had no idea what Smoker was thinking. While the corners of his mouth raised slightly, he directly controlled the lightning in his hand to start moving to the side. This also leads to the fact that no matter which direction Smoker moves, it will be affected by the lightning, and it is completely impossible to remove the elementalization and escape intact. Damn it. After trying to break through to no avail, Smoker became depressed. Once upon a time, he had encountered something so frustrating. But the current situation had to be like this. With 10 hands taken away by Ron, he had lost the initiative. Even now, he really can't release the elementalization, not only because he is afraid of those lightning attacks, but more importantly, Ron has always raised his 10 hands and pointed the top Seastone at him. Smoker believed that as long as he showed his presence, Ron would not hesitate to attack with his 10 hands. Once he was hit, he, as demon fruit power, would lose his power and truly become a lamb to be slaughtered. At this moment, Smoker felt regret for the first time in his mind. If he had known this, he would never have focused solely on the development of devil fruit without paying attention to physical skills or even Hockey's training. If this were not the case, he would not be in such a situation today. He is stronger than Ron and others, but his physical skills are not good and he has not learned Hockey. This also resulted in him having no resistance at all now that devil fruit's abilities are limited. As time passed, both Ron and Smoker's breathing became somewhat rapid. In such a stalemate, the consumption on both sides is extremely huge. Fortunately, Ron is paramecia, so the cost of releasing lightning is actually not too great. Otherwise, due to the disparity in strength between the two sides, the plan to exhaust Smoker's physical strength would be impossible to complete. While the two of them were in a stalemate, the battle in the distance had gradually ended. Not surprisingly, Zoro and Luffy won. A Marine was knocked to the ground immediately, completely unable to fight anymore. It's just that the consumption of the two of them at this moment is extremely huge, and they are standing there constantly panting. Straw Hat Boy, let us go. Straw Hat, save us. Straw Hat, save us, we will deal with those Marines together then. Affa. At this moment, Buggy and the others who were tied up in the distance also started shouting. After all, as far as the current situation is concerned, the Straw Hat Pirates have definitely won. Even though Smoker and Ron haven't decided the winner yet, this is good news for them. After all, the Straw Hat Pirates won, and they still had the possibility of escaping from here. Although it was a bit embarrassing, it was better than losing their lives. If it really falls into the hands of Marine, even if it is not killed directly, it will be sent to impel down, and then things will really go wrong. Hearing this, Luffy subconsciously looked at Buggy not far away and the others couldn't help but frown. Although he was a little disgusted, he also knew that the latter's words seemed to be the truth. They did defeat the surrounding Marines, but more Marines had already gone out to hunt down Sanji and others. The most important thing is that Ron and Smoker are still in a stalemate over this. If there is help from the Buggy Pirates, then... Luffy. Don't believe them. At this time, Zoro stepped forward to stop him. He glanced disdainfully at the Buggy pirate group and others who were captured not far away and said, that guy Buggy is not a good person. Since they have been captured, just let Marine deal with them. Let's recover now and then go rescue Ron. Looking at this posture, Ron is competing with the Marine Colonel in exhaustion and physical strength. As long as we win, we can escape unscathed. Even if we lose, Colonel Marine will be exhausted, then we will take Ron and retreat directly. Good. Hearing this, Luffy nodded. I have to say that Zoro's proposal was good, and it even made him lose his inner tangle. After all, as Zoro said, Buggy and others are indeed not good people, and it would indeed be bad to rescue them. Thinking of this, Luffy and Zoro ignored the cursing Buggy and others and rushed straight to the area where Ron and Smoker were. Damn kid, why do you have so much physical strength? At this time, Smoker couldn't help it anymore. In the smoke state, his face turned red, and his eyes looking at Ron were filled with anger and aggrievedness. He knew he couldn't hold on any longer. The consumption of elementalization is not small, especially this kind of long-term elementalization. For someone like him who only focuses on ability development but ignores physical tempering, the longer he delays, the more he consumes, and even his recovery power is obviously insufficient. It's different if it's Marine Admiral like Aokiji, Kizaru and Akainu. Even though they all tend to favor abilities, their physical strength is real, and their physical strength is extremely abundant. General elementalization is almost useless for them. After all, beings who have reached that level are extremely powerful in the deployment and control of their own physical strength, abilities, and it is not an exaggeration to even call them superb. Yeah, I feel okay. Smoker, what if you can't hold on anymore? This is too vain, isn't it? You didn't get your position as Marine Colonel through connections, did you? Corner of mouth as it rose, Ron was panting a little, but he was still able to hold on. These months of training are not in vain. Of course, the most important thing is that he is Paramecia. Just this small-scale discharge does not consume much physical energy. Asshole. Smoker's eyes widened when he heard Ron's question. His status was obtained in an upright manner, and it can even be said that his current position is the result of being suppressed. After all, this is Logia, and Marine is very protective of this type of talent. If Smoker hadn't offended people because of his bad temper, how could he have been sent to East Blue? To guard Loguetown. This was something that made him extremely angry, but now he was still being ridiculed by Ron. Smoker suddenly frowned and said, "Stop talking nonsense. Smoker, sit upright, and you can actually slander me. Pirate, die." With that said, Smoker brazenly came into contact with elementalization. Let the lightning strike on his body, and then mobilize all his strength to attack Ron. At this point, Smoker knew that he had no choice but to fight to the death. After all, if he continues to persevere, he will definitely be the first to run out of energy. When the time comes, whether it is Ron or Luffy, Zoro will be able to kill him easily. So, now his last hope is to capture Ron first. As long as Ron is captured, Luffy and Zoro, who are also severely exhausted, will not be his opponents. I'm waiting for you. In this regard, Ron's eyes also lit up. His own physical exertion is also extremely serious, plus he is now in Loguetown. God knows when those Marines who are chasing Sanji and others will come back. Now Smoker's desperate fight gives him an excellent opportunity. Super Speed Force. Without any hesitation, Ron drained all his energy. The figure flickered and disappeared immediately. The next second, his figure appeared not far away in front of Zoro and Luffy. Zoro. Luffy. Take me away. After saying that, Ron fell forward directly. Ron. Seeing this, Luffy and Zoro were stunned for a moment, and then without hesitation, they quickly picked up the unconscious Ron, turned around and ran quickly towards the outside world. At this time, Smoker also sounded loudly. Looking through the sound, it can be seen that he has fallen to the ground, and the 10 hands on the shoulder of his left arm have directly penetrated his flesh and blood. The power of the sea stone has made him completely limp and unable to move. Chapter 60 Dorag's attention. Smoker resigns. Colonel Smoker. Colonel Smoker. This scene immediately shocked the Marines not far away. Smoker lost. Although Ron was also unconscious, there was no doubt that the person who lost this time was Smoker. After all, the 10 hands this time were inserted into his shoulders. If Ron was more ruthless, he could insert them into his heart or even his head. In an instant, all the Marines present felt the collapse of their faith. Powerful. It's just too powerful. In East Blue, such pirates would appear. Fortunately, Ron passed out. Otherwise, with the existence of Luffy and Zoro, no one present would be able to stop their massacre. Thinking of this, every Marine's heart feels heavy, as if he was hit by a huge stone. However, the matter has come to this, but they also know that there is no possibility of change. After struggling to stand up from the ground, they walked straight towards Smoker. Although Ron's attack was not fatal, however, Smoker's bleeding was also very severe, and coupled with his extremely weak state, if he did not pull out the soldier's hand as soon as possible or even stop the bleeding, Smoker would still be at risk of death. Thinking of this, the less injured lieutenant headed by Tashigi hurriedly stepped forward and began to try to pull out the 10 hands. But at this moment, they were all injured, and Ron didn't hold back from this attack. Although it was only aimed at Smoker's arm, it was completely penetrated, and even the entire 10 hands were pierced into the ground, leaving only the handle area still on the ground. This also caused Tashigi and others to pull up extremely slightly, and the continued pain made the weak Smoker uncomfortable. After screaming, he passed out directly. Interesting. It's so powerful. With his lieutenant-level strength, he actually defeated Colonel Marine of Logia. Ron is such an interesting little guy. At the same time, in an alley at this moment, Dorag looked at the scenery around the execution platform square with confusion. He had a panoramic view of all this. He had already arrived here when Luffy and Buggy fought. The purpose is to personally see his son Luffy go to the Grand Line, and at the same time escort him. After all, looking at East Blue, the only Marine that can truly be called a threat is Smoker. But Dorag never expected that he would actually see such a scene. Luffy's partners defeated Smoker without even having to take action himself, and everyone even managed to escape safely. Involuntarily, Dorag also had a slight interest in Ron. Du glanced at Execution Eye, and Dorag disappeared into the darkness. At the other end, Luffy and Zoro hurriedly left Loguetown with the unconscious Ron. Not long after, they arrived at the area where the Mary docked. You can see that Sanji, Nami and Usopp are back at this moment. They had escaped Marine's pursuit and were anxiously waiting for the return of Ron and the others in the bow area. It's Luffy and the others who are back. At this time, Usopp, who has the best eyesight, immediately noticed Luffy and Zoro running towards them, and he instantly became excited. Are you back? Hearing this, Sanji and Nami on the side also had a panoramic view. Looking up, Luffy and Zoro were already approaching the Mary. Hey, Sanji, Nami, Usopp, we're back. At this time, Luffy's loud laughter sounded first. Very good, it's really Luffy and the others. Seeing this, Sanji and the three of them also cheered. Immediately afterwards, Nami seemed to have thought of something and said, Sanji, Usopp, pull up the anchor. Let's set sail and leave this Loguetown now. After saying that, she didn't linger and hurriedly flew towards the cockpit. Hearing this, Sanji and Usopp also nodded. After all, Loguetown is indeed dangerous. As the largest marine base in East Blue, there are too many strong marines in it. This time, if it weren't for all kinds of luck, they wouldn't have been able to escape so easily. After looking at each other, the two quickly began to pull up the anchor. After Luffy and Zoro took Ron on board, Nami started to drive the boat towards the sea surface without hesitation. Luffy, Zoro, as the ship goes out to sea, the three of you gather together again. But at this moment, they also saw Ron being put down by Luffy. For a moment, Nami's face showed a trace of nervousness, and he asked, Luffy, Zoro, what is going on? Ron, what's wrong with him? As soon as these words came out, Sanji and Usopp were both in awe. After all, Ron looked really bad at this moment, and his face was pale, as if he was seriously ill. No problem. At this time, Zoro waved his hand, sat down and said, Ron is not injured. He was exhausted from fighting with Smoker and is now in a coma. Luffy and I are similar. Although we defeated those Marines, we also consumed a lot of energy. Hearing this, Nami and the other two people immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Exhausted, he fell into a coma. This is absolutely the best news. After confirming that Ron was not in danger, the three of them were very happy. Especially Nami, she patted her heart at this moment and said, It's okay. I thought something happened to him. No, we are too weak. However, Luffy spoke quietly at this moment. It can be seen that his face is serious at this moment, and there is no joy of survival or even victory in his eyes. Not for anything else, because this matter was not done by him, Luffy. It can even be said that if it hadn't been for Ron's action, he would probably have been defeated or even captured. Thinking of the powerlessness he felt when fighting Smoker, Luffy was heartbroken and clenched his fists and said, If we could become stronger, this would never happen. This time it's Ron. Ron has solved several previous crises. If it weren't for him, we would have been defeated long ago. I must work hard to become stronger, and I will definitely become a qualified captain to protect my crew. As soon as these words came out, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp and Nami couldn't help but remain silent. Compared with before going to sea, their own strength has been greatly improved. Even before arriving in Loguetown, they were still somewhat complacent about their own strength. Among them, Usopp, Sanji and Nami stand out, but now? After experiencing this incident, Sanji, Usopp and Nami knew clearly that they were holding back. If Luffy and Zoro still have the strength to fight and can block some enemies, then they have no possibility or confidence to compete with those powerful enemies. When they thought of this, their unwillingness became more and more intense. Become stronger, I also want to become stronger as soon as possible. Clenching his fists, Sanji slowly lit a cigarette. Then, without any hesitation, he walked directly to the side area and started practicing his kicking skills. Sanji's behavior immediately stimulated Usopp, Luffy and Zoro. Without hesitation, the three of them stood up and walked straight to the side to start exercising. Even the weak Luffy and Zoro did not yell or complain at this moment. Only Nami was not in a hurry to practice. Instead, she helped Ron up from the ground with difficulty and walked towards the cabin. After all, Ron's current condition is still a bit bad and he really needs a good rest. At the same time, Tashigi and others in Loguetown also successfully pulled out the last part of Juju. The severe pain immediately revived Smoker from unconsciousness. After sitting up suddenly, he gasped violently, hoo. Damn pirate Ron. How could he be so fast at that last moment? Is he really an Esper who ate the Logia Thunderfruit? But it's obviously impossible for Logia to be like this, so what devil fruit gave him the ability to discharge electricity? At this moment, Smoker was filled with anger, but more importantly, he was unwilling and rational. He knew very well that this time he was defeated. And it was a failure in the true sense, with no excuse at all. Because of this, as one of the rare people in Naval Headquarters who has the ability to wake up naturally, he is also feeling deeply shocked and depressed at the moment. Colonel Smoker. At this time, Tashigi stepped forward and said, according to reports from our people, the Straw Hat Pirates have already left on a boat. In addition, we are all seriously injured now, and there will definitely be a series of problems with the security in Loguetown. What should we do next? Zero. Please give me flowers. Zero. As soon as these words came out, the other lieutenants also looked at Smoker. As Tashigi said, the current situation in Loguetown is not good, especially Marine's situation, which will definitely not be restored overnight. Report to Naval Headquarters. After coming back to his senses, Smoker struggled to stand up from the ground. He glanced around, glanced at the injured Marine, and the captured members of the buggy pirates on the ground, and the unwillingness in his eyes became stronger and he said, I will report it to Naval Headquarters. This matter was caused by my negligence. When the time comes, I will lead a team out to sea to pursue the Straw Hat Pirates. Whether it is in the East Blue or the Grand Line, I must personally capture them. In addition, Ron of the Straw Hat Pirates cannot be underestimated. His potential and danger are extremely huge. I need to tell Naval Headquarters to respond as soon as possible. Speaking of this, Smoker seemed to have thought of something. He looked at where Buggy and the others were and said, come here, arrest everyone in Buggy's pirate group. Then contact the people over at Impel Down and throw them all into Impel Down. These guys are lawless, and the best option is to imprison them. Yes. Hearing this, Tashigi and other lieutenants and marine present breathed a sigh of relief. Immediately afterwards, they no longer hesitated, quickly cleaning the battlefield and taking the buggy pirates and others into custody. Tashigi helped Smoker and hurried back to the marine base. Point 0. After entering the office, Smoker directly picked up the phone. Dial. Marshal Sengoku, I am Smoker, I have something to report to you. Bang. Naval Headquarters, Marshal's office. Sengoku hung up the phone and slapped the table on the table, angrily saying, lawless, really lawless. Smoker, I am so disappointed. The dignified Colonel Marine, and even the Logia Demon Fruit Power, was defeated by a brat. This is simply a shame and humiliation. As soon as these words came out, the Marshal's office fell silent. Looking around, you can see Crane Vice Admiral, Garp, Zephyr and Aokiji sitting among them. Sengoku. Looking at the furious Sengoku, Zephyr, as Smoker's teacher, frowned subconsciously and said, what happened? Smoker was defeated? Wasn't he guarding East Blue? It's just East Blue, who can threaten him? As soon as these words came out, Garp, Crane Vice Admiral and Aokiji all looked curious. After all, this matter may not be considered big, but it may not be considered small. Especially when Smoker was defeated in the East Blue, this incident made Garp have some speculations. It's not because of Garp's grandson. Staring at Garp angrily, Sengoku explained. The Straw Hat Pirates entered Loguetown, and Garp's grandson made a big fuss on the execution stage, and even started a war with the buggy pirates. After that, Smoker went to suppress it. The buggy pirates were captured, but they failed when facing the Straw Hat Pirates. He was even killed by Ron, a 16-year-old. The child was defeated, and defeated by exhausting his physical strength. This was simply a shame and humiliation. Colonel Marine, who came out of the Naval Headquarters elite training camp, actually lost to a little pirate in terms of physical strength. When did the young people of this generation have such poor physical health? As soon as these words came out, the whole place fell silent. Everyone's face was filled with astonishment. I highly doubt that Sengoku's words were wrong. They can understand defeat. After all, Logia is not invincible. Defeating Smoker is not a problem if he finds his weaknesses. But the reason for their defeat made them feel uncomfortable. They were defeated because of lack of physical strength. This is simply. With a slap on the table, Zephyr stood up angrily, gritted his teeth and said, "Smoker, this bastard, I told you to focus on improving your own strength instead of. It's a single-minded effort to develop Devil Fruit's abilities. I'm fine now. I was killed by a brat. This is simply a shame and a great humiliation. Sengoku, give me an order to get Smoker back. I will personally train his weak body." Hearing this, Sengoku's mouth twitched. He knew what Zephyr meant, but he still shook his head and said, "No way. That guy Smoker has resigned from me. He will go out to sea to chase the Straw Hat Pirates after a night's rest. Obviously, this defeat will also hit him hard. I want to get my place back." Chapter 61. The murderous intention of Marine's top management leads to a supernova ahead of schedule. Hearing this, Garp and others frowned. Smoker resigned to hunt down the Straw Hat Pirates. This matter was indeed a bit emotional. But they can all understand. After all, if they encountered such an aggrieved thing, they couldn't just pretend it never happened. Thinking of this, Crane Vice Admiral said, "In that case, let Smoker go. Smoker is not bad in nature, but he is a little too aloof. We transferred him to East Blue to polish his temperament. Now with the emergence of the Straw Hat Pirates, this step can be accelerated. And I can also take this opportunity to thoroughly clarify some things, so that they can join the picket team I send out to clean up all the scum in the Grand Line." Hearing this, Sengoku and others also nodded. Smoker's matter cannot be changed, but Crane Vice Admiral's arrangement is also the most reasonable. Correct. Suddenly, Aokiji raised his hand. What's going on with Ron? A pirate who just went to sea is actually strong enough to defeat Smoker. Although Smoker has not yet reached the general level, he is among the best at the school level. As soon as these words came out, Zephyr, Crane Vice Admiral and Garp also looked at Sengoku. To be honest, they are all quite curious about Ron's situation at the moment. In the past, the Straw Hat Pirates were the most aggressive, the most ruthless, and the person with the highest bounty on their head was Ron. This time he actually defeated Smoker, which is even more incredible. I've got it figured out. Waving his hand, Sengoku reluctantly picked up a document from the side. This is the 880 that he asked people to prepare after receiving the news before. After picking it up, Sengoku threw it on the table in front of him and said, "Ron, 17 years old, about the level of a captain. He is also demon fruit power. According to Smoker's report, his ability is lightning, but his speed is extremely fast, and he has a tendency to be second to Kizaru. According to Smoker, Ron has developed his fruit ability extremely well and can move at extremely fast speeds, even beyond the school level. Even Smoker can't catch up with him." Having said this, Sengoku seemed to have thought of something and suddenly turned to look at Garp, his eyes full of anger. "Sengoku, what do you see me doing?" Realizing Sengoku's glare, Garp had a look of astonishment on his face, plucked his ears and said, "My useless grandson did cause a lot of trouble, but the one who defeated Smoker was Ron, not him. Tisk, stop talking to me about him." With a cold snort, Sengoku angrily yelled, "Did you hand over Marine 6 styles to your grandson?" Smoker reported that the entire Straw Hat Pirates know Marine 6 styles. Although they are only at the entry level, they are definitely authentic Marine 6 styles. What? Marine 6 styles? Hearing this, Vice Admiral Crane, Zephyr and Aokiji all raised their heads and looked at Garp, their eyes full of astonishment. After all, Marine 6 styles is Marine's secret, at least it cannot be passed on to anyone other than Marine. The Straw Hat Pirates now all know Marine 6 styles. If it is really taught by Garp, then. What? Marine 6 styles? I didn't pass it to Luffy. Garp also had a look of astonishment on his face. He looked at Sengoku in disbelief and said, "How is that possible? Marine 6 styles is an advanced physical technique within my Marine. Only elite Marines can learn and master it. Where did Luffy and the others get it?" This, seeing Garp's unfaithful expression, Sengoku and others hesitated for a moment. After looking at each other, Sengoku frowned and said, "You really didn't teach me this?" "No." Shaking his head, Garp said solemnly, "I will not do anything that violates Marine order." Hearing this, Sengoku and others nodded. Since Garp didn't teach it, it means it was spread through other channels. Crane, check thoroughly. Waving his hand, Sengoku said solemnly, "Continue talking about Ron." According to Smoker's report, Ron's control ability is not what Thunder Fruit should have, and his physical strength is not much higher than the same level, eliminating the possibility that it is Zone. So, the only possibility left is Paramecia, and that's what I'm worried about right now. With that said, Sengoku took out another picture and threw it on the table and said, "Paramecia Lightning Fruit. A Paramecia Devil Fruit that is considered useless and has little effect. But judging from Ron's development, this is an existence that we have underestimated, and its value will even be no less than those of the top Paramecia Devil Fruit in a sense." The speed alone is far beyond the same level. According to Smoker's explanation, if Ron continues to develop this ability to reach a higher level, it is likely to reach a speed similar to Kizaru's. Hearing this, Garp and others couldn't help but take a deep breath. Without him, if it is true as Sengoku said, Ron's danger level will once again increase by more than one level. Terrible talent, terrible potential, plus a devil fruit that may not be inferior to the top paramecia, this is what makes Ron outstanding. This guy is not to be underestimated. After a while, Zephyr raised his head and said, everyone knows what's going on with Logia's sparkling fruit. At the same level, almost no one is Kizaru's opponent. This is because Kizaru doesn't pay attention to his own and Haki's training, otherwise even the 4 emperors will be defeated. There is a possibility of defeat. Ron is different. He eats paramecia. Although he also pays attention to the development of abilities, he pays more attention to his own tempering and improvement. This will cause him to be more powerful than Kizaru at the same level once he grows up. Danger. I suggest that he be captured or eliminated as soon as possible. As soon as these words came out, Crane Vice Admiral and Aokiji both nodded. After all, according to Sengoku's analysis, the existence of Chuan En is indeed very dangerous and hidden. I think there's a bit of a fuss. Garp shrugged and retorted, how can a mere brat grow up? And this is just out of Loguetown. It hasn't even entered the Grand Line yet, I think. Alright. However, before Garp could finish speaking, the 10 Emperors' siege was interrupted without hesitation. After giving Garp a fierce look, he immediately said, this matter has been settled. When Marine encounters the Straw Hat Pirates, he will focus on capturing Ron, and at the end of the day, he will eliminate them. From now on, the bounty for the Straw Hat Pirates will be increased. Straw Hat's bounty has been increased to 130 million belly, Zoro's bounty has been increased to 120 million belly, Sanji's bounty has been increased to 77 million belly, Usopp's bounty has been increased to 30 million belly, and Nami's bounty has been increased to 30 million belly. The gold was raised to 16 million belly. At this point, Sengoku was speechless. Then, he raised his head and said, Pirate Ron, the summer bounty has been increased to 300 million belly. The above is the decision on this matter. You start making preparations. Yes. Hearing this, Vice Admiral he stood up directly and walked out of the office. But in this scene, Garp also looked solemn. Although the target is Ron is also a member of the Straw Hat Pirates. Under such circumstances, this is not a good thing, not good news. Especially when a pirate group suddenly had 3 existences with bounties over 100 million, this was an extremely explosive thing for the sea. It can be said that even the Straw Hat Pirates have not yet entered the Grand Line, but now countless pirate hunters and bounty hunters are starting to get ready. Even the new generation of pirates in this era will keep an eye on the Straw Hat Pirates. After all, if those supernovas die, the captain's bounty will exceed 100 million. No, I have to go there in person to find out more about the little guy's situation. Muttering in his heart, Garp stood up directly and walked towards the outside world without saying hello or saying anything. In this regard, Sengoku, Zephyr and Aokiji all pretended not to see it and continued to discuss the previous things. The next day, the new bounty order for the Straw Hat Pirates spread throughout the sea. For a time, the 4 evils and Grand Line were all excited. The reward orders for Sanji, Nami, and Usopp are nothing. After all, there are so many pirates with bounties worth tens of millions, even among the newly minted pirates. But Ron, Luffy and Zoro are different too. Bounty exceeds 100 million. That's a bounty of over 300 million. Fortunately, Zoro and Luffy both have bounties of 130 million, which is not much different from most supernovas. But Ron is different. 300 million. With a bounty of 300 million Baileys, Ron immediately became the leader of the supernovas. It can even be said that he is already among the best within the Grand Line. Grand Line, a pirate ship entered just past Upside Down Mountain. At this time, Newsbird appeared and directly dropped the Straw Hat Pirates bounty order. Oh my god, something big happened to the captain. After getting the reward order, a crew member hurried to the area next to Kid and said anxiously, Captain Kid, Vice Captain Kira, something bad has happened. Our limelight has been stolen. The Straw Hat Pirates, there are 3 Straw Hat Pirates with bounties exceeding 100 million. Especially Ron, his bounty has jumped to 100 million Baileys. What? After hearing this, Kid, who was about to start a career in high spirits, was dumbfounded. You know, not long ago, he and Kira both posted a bounty of over 100 million and became supernovas. They were already extremely famous existences. 2 supernovae in one ship, this is a situation that has not happened for many years. But now, among the Straw Hat Pirates, 3 people with bounties exceeding 100 million suddenly appeared. There is even an existence with a bounty of 300 million belly, which is simply stepping on his and Kira's face to climb up. Give me. With a low growl, Kid grabbed the reward order angrily. After seeing the bounty orders from Luffy, Zoro and Ron, his face instantly distorted, and he destroyed the bounty orders with a slap, gritting his teeth and said, Ron, Straw Hat Boy, Zoro, I will remember you. The Straw Hat Pirates, I look forward to meeting you. When the time comes, I will completely destroy you. At this point, Kid couldn't help roaring. The members of the Kid Pirates on the side also said with murderous intent, Kill. Kill those guys from the Straw Hat Pirates. We must kill the Straw Hat Pirates. Captain, there's new news. On the other end, the Heart Pirates have now entered the Grand Line. A crew member hurried to Telfa with a reward. Next to Garo, he handed out the bounty orders for Ron and the others and said, the Straw Hat Pirates bounty order has just been updated. The bounties for Captain Straw Hat and Pirate Hunter Zoro are both 130 million Baileys. But crew member Ron, his bounty is as high as 300 million Bailey. According to the information contained in this, the Straw Hat Pirates have received so much bounty before they even left the East Blue and entered the Grand Line. Oh, hearing this, Turo was a little surprised. He reached out to take the bounty order and looked at it for a moment, then said thoughtfully, the Straw Hat Master, the Ron Master, and the Zoro Master? There are 3 supernovas in one ship, and one even reached the level of 300 million Bailey. This shows how much Marine attaches importance to the Straw Hat Pirates. It would be nice to get in touch with such a dangerous existence. Maybe we can reach an agreement with them to complete the matter. Having said this, the figure of Doflamingo appeared in Telfagero's mind, and he subconsciously clenched his fists. The killing intent and hatred in his eyes could not be concealed. 3.0, Godfather, 3 supernovas appeared in the Straw Hat Pirates. And there is a supernova with a bounty of 300 million Bailey. Within the scope of West Blue's Upside Down Mountain, within the Flame Tank Pirates, a pirate hurriedly came to Capone Bega's side, raised the bounty in his hand and said excitedly, and they live there. We haven't entered the Grand Line yet, Captain, can this be our next goal? As soon as these words came out, everyone in the Flame Tank Pirates began to breathe quickly. After all, if they can choose it as their target, then they can hunt the pirate group carrying 3 supernovae. Facing everyone's gaze, Capone Beg smiled lightly and then said, but this is not necessary. What we need to do now is to strengthen ourselves as quickly as possible. After entering the Grand Line, we will also need to hibernate for a period of time, but we can't just start acting stupidly. 11. The Straw Hat Pirates are already a target, which just attracts firepower and reduces the pressure for us to enter the Grand Line. Young men, hurry up and enter the Grand Line directly. Taking advantage of this opportunity given by the Straw Hat Pirates, we must quickly take root and hibernate and strengthen our help. Yes. Hearing this, all the pirates present agreed. Immediately afterwards, they drove the boat quickly into the Upside Down Mountain of West Blue and started heading towards the Grand Line. And this kind of thing also happens constantly in Grand Line and Sahai. Everyone was shocked by the powerful news about the 3 supernovas of the Straw Hat Pirates. At this moment, they were sharpening their knives and waiting for the Straw Hat Pirates to appear and wipe them all out. Chapter 62 The Evolution of Liang Kuei Knife, Super Large Sea Kings Group. Ron and his team didn't know about all this. They're still on the voyage and living a life of orderly exercise every day. Under such circumstances, the strength of Straw Hat crew also increased rapidly. Especially after what happened in Loguetown, Sanji, Usopp and Nami also worked a lot harder. However, as his practice continued to improve, Ron's mood became a little irritable at the moment. For no other reason than that his strength has reached the level of a captain, which means that he has already reached the level of a lieutenant. If he wants to continue to improve, the only thing he can do is to enter the school level. But so far, Luffy is the only one on the ship who has reached the school level. Even Zoro is still on the same level as Ron, but Zoro is fine. Because he is a swordsman, as long as he understands the secret of cutting iron and becomes a swordsman, his strength will reach the school level overnight. But Ron is different. He felt that no matter how much he exercised, his body seemed to be shackles and could not improve. Not only that, no matter how hard he trained, he couldn't even improve at all. This made him feel a little helpless. He didn't know what went wrong and had to stop practicing the sword drawing technique in Marine 6 styles. Ron, what's wrong with you? Seeing Ron unhappy, Luffy asked curiously. As soon as these words came out, Zoro and others looked at Ron curiously. I don't understand why he is so sad. The atmosphere is obviously very good and there is no problem. Feel sorry. After coming back to his senses, Ron knew that his sad mood had been captured by Luffy and others. However, he did not hide it at this moment and said directly, I feel that my own improvement has been shackles. My strength has reached the level of captain, but there seems to be something preventing me from completing my promotion if I want to enter the school level. As soon as these words came out, Zoro also raised his head and said, me too. No matter how much I practice during this period, I can feel that my rapidly improving strength is slowing down. I'm afraid that it won't be long before I encounter a situation similar to yours, Ron. After saying that, the two of them looked at where Luffy was. After all, within the Straw Hat Pirates, the person who broke the lock and entered the school level was Luffy. That's it. Speaking of which, I was like this for a while too. Facing the gaze, Luffy pondered for a moment, and then said, when I went to sea, I left because my strength could not be improved. Otherwise, I might not have gone to sea so early. You all know what happened next. I only entered the school level after completing the development of the second gear. After that, there will be no obstacles to improving my strength. Hearing this, Ron and Zoro nodded. They knew this situation. When they first met, Luffy was at the level of a captain, otherwise it would be impossible to compete with Menka. But because of this, Ron frowned and murmured. In this way, Luffy is the shackles that were broken through the development of Devil Fruit. But I have already developed the Super Speed Force. It is too difficult to go further in a short period of time. And I'm not Zoro. It's not like a swordsman can't reach the threshold of becoming a swordsman so quickly. So what I can do next is to break my own shackles and squeeze out my own potential to the greatest extent to improve, but in this way the difficulty and speed will be greatly reduced. Rumble rumble, before Ron could finish speaking, there was a roar. Immediately afterwards, shelling could be seen on the sea in the distance. A marine warship can be seen chasing a small boat. You can vaguely see a little girl rowing away in fear on the small boat. Marine. Seeing this scene, Ron and others frowned slightly. To be honest, they met a lot of Marines in East Blue, but in fact these Marines were almost all scum. Now we meet again. Marine is actually chasing a little girl who looks to be about 10 years old. This is simply crazy. Nami, speed up and let's go there. Almost instantly, Luffy spoke. Good. Hearing this, Nami nodded. Looking at the little girl who was being chased, she felt some sympathy and some empathy. After all, when she first went to sea and became a pirate, her situation was very similar. But at that time, it was not only Marines who were chasing her, but also pirates. Soon, the melee approached the little girl. But at this time, a cannonball exploded next to the boat, and the boat burst into pieces, and the little girl in it fell into a coma. Luffy. Seeing this situation, Ron frowned and immediately said, "Rescue the little girl. I'll be back as soon as I go." After saying that, Ron jumped up, stepped on the moonwalk and flew quickly towards the ship in the distance. And Luffy was not idle either. He stretched out his hand, stretched his arms rapidly, and in just a moment, he picked up the little girl from the surface of the sea. Immediately afterwards, a group of people began to quickly treat the little girl. On the other end, Ron stepped on the moonwalk and arrived on the marine warship. Not surprisingly, this is the marine who chased the little girl in the original book. After taking a careful look, Ron's eyes were filled with murderous intent. A bunch of scum. I'm not in the mood for you to continue causing trouble. He was in a bad mood. When he saw these marine scum, Ron chose to take action without hesitation. Speed Force open. With a low roar, Ron's figure turned into an electric arc and rushed directly into the warship. Immediately afterwards, he pulled out his knife, and as he swung the knife again and again, one person died tragically in his hands. Including the leader, Major Marine, is no exception. 10 minutes later, all the Marines on the warship were killed by Ron. At this moment, Ron's expression showed something strange. Without him, because he could feel that his injured Liang Kuei Dao Shui began to mutate after absorbing the Marine's blood. The entire blade was constantly trembling, and a vague warm current penetrated into his body along the blade. At this moment, Ron clearly felt that his stagnant improvement seemed to be mobilized again. It was like a trace of water flowing into a dry river bed. Although it was not much, it was extremely pure and strong. But in just a moment, this feeling disappeared, and the blood of Liang Kuei Dao returned to its original state, and part of the blade already showed a blood-red sheen. Does blood have special powers? Ron glanced thoughtfully at the famous sword in his hand, and Ron remembered what Tashigi said before in Loguetown. This blood used to be the weakest good sword, but after absorbing the blood, he has evolved into the strongest good sword, and may even be upgraded to a great sword. The current situation proves that Tashigi's words are true. But Tashigi didn't know that the improvement of blood was not only his own quality, but also could even feed back to the host. Judging from the current trend, this blood will obviously start to evolve into a sharp knife. Because of this, the power fed back can help Ron's strength improve. Although it cannot be said that it will be directly promoted to the school level, it at least gave Ron hope. If I were to be promoted to the great knife in a true sense, the feedback I would get would not say that I would be promoted to the school level, but it would definitely not be too far off. Blood. I need more blood. At this moment, Ron was extremely excited. When he finally found a way to break the situation, he didn't hesitate. Walk to the cabin area and gather all the cannonballs on the warship together. After taking out one and holding it in his hand, Ron stepped on the moonwalk and left the range of the warship. After reaching a safe distance, Ron didn't waste any time and directly mobilized the cross current to ignite the fuse of the cannonball, and then threw it towards the cabin area of the warship without hesitation. With a loud roar, the shell quickly exploded inside the warship. And its explosion also detonated the piled-up shells. In an instant, continuous explosions resounded, and the entire warship exploded directly, and finally sank into the sea. Ron, did you kill all those Marines? As Ron returned, Luffy and others asked in surprise and astonishment. Yes, nodding, Ron said calmly, I figured it out. Those guys were chasing this little girl for the 1,000-year dragon. They even said that after finding the 1,000-year dragon, they would kill the little girl and everyone in the lost land. As expected, those Marines are not good things either. If I kill them directly, I can eliminate the hidden dangers. Lost place? Millennium Dragon. Hearing this, Luffy and others couldn't help but exclaimed. Immediately afterwards, strong expectations and curiosity emerged on everyone's face. The fabled Lost Land itself is a source of endless curiosity. Not to mention the existence of the legendary Millennium Dragon. Is there really a thousand-year dragon? Is there really a dragon that lives for thousands of years? The Lost Land. Where is this place? I really want to see it. No, that's a thousand-year dragon. I'm also very curious about what it looks like. For a moment, Luffy, Nami and Usopp were all shouting and expecting. Both Zoro and Sanji also looked curious at this moment. Ahem, at this moment, the unconscious little girl woke up. You, who are you? Struggling to stand up, Abyss looked at Ron and others warily. I am Luffy, the man who wants to become the Pirate King. We just saved you too. Glancing at Abyss, Luffy said carelessly. What's your name? Ron just said that the Marines who were chasing you were looking for the Millennium Dragon. Is there really a thousand-year dragon in this world? As soon as these words came out, Zoro and others also looked at Abyss. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Only Ron was extremely indifferent, thinking about how to obtain blood to stimulate the evolution of the famous sword. My name is Abyss. After confirming that Luffy and others were not enemies, Abyss breathed a sigh of relief. Then, after she glanced at Luffy, she continued, the thousand-year dragon does exist. But the current situation of the thousand-year dragon is also very bad. I came here because I wanted to find medicine for the thousand-year dragon. I didn't expect to be targeted by those guys. Really have? Great, the legendary thousand-year dragon. I really want to see it. These thousand-year-old 650 dragons must be really cool. After getting the answer, Luffy and others were very happy. Immediately afterwards, Luffy quickly used his personal charm to convince the little girl to watch the thousand-year dragon together. As the ship moved forward, a group of people also fell into a happy atmosphere, including Abyss, who quickly integrated into it. But not long after, the ship also stopped moving. This time they entered a special sea area, which was similar to the calm belt. For a ship without oars like the Mary, it was immediately stopped and unable to move. What happened? The ship can't move. There is no wind and our ship is stuck. For a moment, Luffy and others didn't care about anything else and quickly came to the area around the ship. After seeing that the ship was completely unable to move forward, everyone looked a little panicked. After all, this is a vast sea. Once the ship cannot sail, then. Bang, however, before they could recover, roars followed. As the sea surface exploded, super large sea kings suddenly appeared, and the Mary was pinned to the area above its head by a super large sea kings that resembled a sea snake. This scene immediately lifted Ron's spirits. Looking at those oversized sea kings, his breathing became rapid at this moment. Blood. Powerful blood. There is no doubt that these super large blood can also meet the needs of famous swords. If you can kill one or even multiple super large sea kings, it is entirely possible to use their blood to complete the evolution of the famous sword, and even sea kings. So big sea kings. It's over, how could we encounter so many super large sea kings? 11 at the same time, Nami and others on the deck couldn't help but exclaimed. At this moment, they were all desperate. After all, compared with these super large sea kings, the Mary is just as small as an ant, let alone people like them. Not urgent. Ron was very calm about this. After all, they are now in the body of a super large sea kings. As long as they make sure it doesn't die, they will be safe. Thinking of this, Ron said, Zoro, Sanji, come out with the rope. I want to fix the Mary to this sea kings as soon as possible, and then let it take us forward to the Lost Land. With its existence, the other super large sea kings will also be afraid and will not take the initiative to attack us. Chapter 63 Arrive at the Lost Land and obtain a special physique, the undead dragon body. Oh, okay. Hearing this, Zoro and others woke up from a dream. Although the existence of the super large sea kings around them is indeed terrifying, according to Ron's story, they seem to have a chance to escape. Thinking of this, a group of people took action quickly. Soon, they found the rope. After that, Ron directly stepped on the moonwalk to tie the Mary to a corner of the super large sea kings. After ensuring his own safety, Ron jumped up to the area above the head of the super large sea kings, and without hesitation took out his knife and stabbed it out. Jung. Fire was flying everywhere, and although Ron's knife was a famous knife, it was unable to break through the skin of the super large sea kings at this moment. Chidori blade. In desperation, Ron could only mobilize his abilities. In an instant, the Chidori blade covered the blade, and with the sharpness of lightning, it directly penetrated the corner of the sea king's head. A trace of stinging pain was felt, and the super large sea kings twisted its body but did not react much. After all, with his physique, Ron's attack was like a mosquito bite. But because of this, it began to wander towards the area ahead, and Ron continuously released lightning to invade the head of the super large sea kings, stimulating its pain nerves and flying forward. Very good. Leave the range of those super large sea kings. Great, with the help of these super large sea kings, we can reach the legendary Lost Land faster. For a moment, Luffy and others on the boat cheered. After all, that moment just frightened them. There are so many super large sea kings, if any one of them swallows them, they will all die. Even if they are in the sea, they will have no possibility of escaping. Under such circumstances, time flies by. As the super large sea kings continued to gallop, the blade in Ron's hand gradually turned blood red. While continuously absorbing the blood of the super-large sea kings, the evolution of the famous sword blood has also begun, and even the feedback to Ron is constantly increasing. About half a day later, the evolution of the entire famous sword blood was completely completed. With a bright flash of blood, the blade of the famous sword in Ron's hand turned completely bloody red. Under the continuous action of the feedback power of the famous sword, Ron felt that his physical fitness had improved at least 10 times in just half a day. Although he still has not reached the major level, he is already only one step away from the major level. Even without the help of feedback from famous swordsmen, Ron is still confident that he can complete the breakthrough within a month and reach the school level in the true sense. Okay, for a moment, Ron burst into laughter. It can be said that I am extremely satisfied and happy with all this situation. If nothing else, the harvest this time is really too huge. Especially after the famous sword blood evolved, Ron has also figured out its abilities. This blood is a special sword. It is not a simple famous sword, but a material fused with devil fruit, which was later obtained and cast into a famous sword. The devil fruit that the blood blade is fused with is ferocious, the evolution fruit. This is an auxiliary devil fruit, which itself is useless in the devil fruit illustrated book. But it is different after being forged into a famous sword. It can evolve by absorbing blood and can also feed back to the sword owner. It's just that the limit of this sword has been reached. Even if it is integrated with the power of the evolutionary fruit, it is still a dead object and cannot reach the level of awakening. Therefore, the current state of this bloody blade is its ultimate, and there is no possibility of further reaching the supreme sharp knife sequence. Pity. Paramecia evolution fruit. This is a powerful fruit. If a person eats it, the benefits will be truly huge. After a while, Ron came back to his senses, sighed and looked at the bloody blade in his hand with regret. Evolution fruit. If someone eats this, it can be used as a weapon. Unfortunately, when the item is fused with it, without the power of awakening, its value is greatly reduced, and it becomes a low-end item. But now that it was over, Ron wasn't too disappointed. After all, he has accepted the benefits brought by the blood blade, and it is now a big sharp knife, and its value is indeed not weak. Look, that's the legendary Lost Land. At this moment, a shout came from behind. Looking up, you can see the looming outline of an island on the distant sea. Even the area ahead is out of the calm belt range. For a moment, Ron's expression changed, and without caring about anything else, he quickly used Moonwalk to return to the Mary. Cut. With a low growl, Ron immediately cut off the ropes tied to the super-large sea kings. Immediately afterwards, under the influence of huge inertia, the Mary flew out directly. After falling heavily on the sea, it moved forward rapidly under the influence of inertia, aiming directly at the legendary Lost Land. An hour later, Ron and others successfully entered the Lost Land on the Mary. Not surprisingly, without the obstruction of Marine, Ron and his team quickly arrived at the location of the Thousand-Year Dragon. Under the leadership of Abyss, Luffy and others also saw the Thousand-Year Dragon as they wished. Wow, this is the Millennium Dragon, looks so big. But why do you look so depressed? Looking at the huge thousand-year-old dragon in front of them, Luffy, Nami, Usopp and others couldn't help but exclaimed. Especially Luffy, who immediately ran forward to protect the Thousand-Year Dragon with a giggle. Ron, on the other hand, frowned slightly at this moment. In the original book, the Thousand-Year Dragon looks very big, but to be honest, it cannot be compared with those super-large sea kings in the outside world. But this time when he saw the Thousand-Year Dragon, Ron also felt that something was wrong. If nothing else, it's simply too small. Although the volume is larger than sea kings, it is incredible to say that a being that has lived for thousands of years is only as large as a large sea king's. The most important thing is that from the first moment he saw the Millennium Dragon, Ron felt a vague desire from his heart. But he didn't know where this desire came from, nor why he had such emotions. Finally waiting for you. The person with the dragon soul. Suddenly, a voice rang in Ron's ear. At this moment, Ron looked in all directions on alert. But there are still outsiders, and the voice just now does not belong to the Straw Hat Pirates and Abyss. It's you. But in just a moment, Ron's eyes were locked on the Thousand-Year Dragon. That old voice undoubtedly came from a long time ago. There is no doubt that the age of the Thousand-Year Dragon in front of me is very long ago, and it is even possible that it belongs to it. But because of this, Ron was even more confused. Dragon Soul? What it is? When did you have such a thing? It's me. At this time, the voice of the Millennium Dragon sounded again. Young man with a dragon soul, your appearance will trigger changes in the world. The person guided by the ancient prophecy of my dragon clan is you. Come on, let me completely activate your divine body. At this moment, the Millennium Dragon suddenly opened his eyes. The next second, the Millennium Dragon opened its mouth, and a wave of air swept out. The roar of the dragon resounded, causing a huge hurricane to fly Luffy and others away. However, this force also took a direct detour when it approached Ron. Before Ron could recover, the surrounding mountain walls were already surrounded by wind blades, separating him from the Straw Hat Pirates. Ron! Outside the wind blade wall, Luffy and others had stabilized their bodies, but at this moment they were also nervously looking at where Ron was. After all, they were all expelled, except Ron. Moreover, the wind blade wall built by the Millennium Dragon is extremely powerful, and even they cannot break into it. No need to worry. Seeing this situation, Ron also came back to his senses. Although he didn't know what the Thousand-Year Dragon was referring to, he generally understood it. He seems to have become something similar to the Son of Prophecy, and the Millennium Dragon seems to be opening up some special physique for himself. When he thought of this, Ron became excited instantly. You know, Luffy and Zoro's special physique has made him envious for a long time. No matter how bruised Luffy is, he can recover as before by drinking milk and eating meat. No matter how bruised Zoro is, as long as he sleeps, he will be completely stable after one sleep. This is simply the setting of immortal Xiaoqiang. But although his body is enhanced by Paramecia Devil Fruit, it doesn't have any special physique. Now if you get a special physique, you will definitely be greatly enhanced. Thinking of this, Ron immediately said, the Thousand-Year Dragon has something to tell me, and he won't hurt me. As soon as these words came out, Luffy and others who were anxious outside breathed a sigh of relief. Although I don't know what the situation is, looking at this trend, Ron is not in danger. After looking at each other, they didn't say anything and just waited patiently in the area outside the Windblade wall. Seeing this, Ron also breathed a sigh of relief. Immediately afterwards, he looked at Millennium Dragon Dao. Hashtag you just said you wanted to open a divine body for me, what kind of special physique is it? Yes. The Millennium Dragon glanced at Ron and then said, this is my destiny. It's also your fate, come on, I will activate your special physique now. After saying that, Nianlong suddenly opened his mouth. Immediately afterwards, a round bead flew out of his mouth. This bead is about the size of a baby's fist, exudes azure light, and contains an extremely rich breath of life. Go! Before Ron could recover, the Millennium Dragon blew out a sharp breath. The next second, the bead penetrated directly into Ron's mouth and entered his belly. At this moment, Ron couldn't help but scream, and his whole body felt as if his vision went dark and he passed out. Ron! Ron! Seeing this situation, Luffy and others stood up instantly and looked eagerly at where Ron was. After all, the thousand-year-old dragon's behavior just now felt like it was attacking Ron. This is not good news, even. Don't worry, he's fine at this time, a weak voice came from the Millennium Dragon's mouth. After taking a look at Luffy and others, the Millennium Dragon's body suddenly began to glow with green light. Immediately afterwards, under their gaze, the body of the thousand-year dragon directly shattered into countless green particles, and then wrapped around Ron's body at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, the wind blade walls that existed in the cave also dissipated. Seeing this situation, Luffy and others were dumbfounded. The Millennium Dragon disappeared? Moreover, the transformed green particles seemed to be covering Ron's body. What is going on? But looking at Ron lying there breathing evenly, Luffy and others did not dare to rush to disturb him. After looking at each other, Luffy said, I don't know what happened though. But Ron seems to be fine. Let's stay on the Liao Wangjiao Island first, and then we can go on adventures after Ron wakes up. Good. Hearing this, Zoro and others also nodded. They also couldn't give up on Ron as a partner. Immediately afterwards, the Straw Hat Pirates and others also set up camp. Except for one person who comes to watch over Ron every day, the rest are practicing on the island to become stronger. Abyss also started training under the leadership of Luffy and others. Day after day, 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. Comfortable. On this day, Ron's closed eyes opened, he stood up from the ground, stretched and felt comfortable all over. Immediately afterwards, he seemed to think of something and immediately began to check his situation. In just a moment, Ron felt the difference in himself at this moment. Now his physical fitness is at least 100 times stronger than before, and his strength has reached the school level, and has directly reached the level of a lieutenant colonel, or even close to a colonel. In addition, he can clearly feel the activity of his physical body and life energy. Especially on his shoulder, there was a tattoo of a thousand-year dragon. As Ron moved his body, the thousand-year-old dragon tattoo suddenly shone brightly, and then a message left by the thousand-year-old dragon before it died was introduced into his mind. Immortal dragon body. Has resilience, destructive power and potential comparable to dragons. With the body of an undead dragon, it can even transform into half-animals and beasts similar to the Zone Demon fruit power. But mine is Dragon Transformation and Dragon Transformation. Dragon Transformation can increase one's strength, speed and body 10 times. After Dragon Transformation, one can transform into a thousand-year dragon, exerting about 50 times more strength than oneself.